Chapter 1361. Ningtianya didn't understand and kept watching. He seemed to have sensed some kind of artistic conception, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Moreover, with Ningtianya's knowledge, he actually didn't know what the little tree in the pond was called. He didn't even know what those little pearls were. To be able to stand out from the water just like that, and turn into pearls. Moreover, it seemed to be mixed with something else. Ningtianya had never seen any of these things before. Where did this little brat get such strange things from? He saw that this fair and delicate child actually had a solemn look on his face at this moment. Sitting in the water with his butt bare, his expression was solemn and serene. His chubby little hands, which still had pits in them, made a series of strange gestures, and then he dazzlingly retracted them at his navel. An inexplicable energy surged out from his little body and entered the water. Then, the water rippled and waves of snow-white waves hit the bridge. Little round pearls appeared again, and were driven by the waves to climb up the tree. The first layer, the second layer, the third layer. Ningtianya finally counted clearly. There were a total of 10 layers on this tree. The higher it went, the fewer trees there were. At the very top, there was only a stretch of trees. Now, many pearls were climbing up, but most of them stopped at the first or second layer, piling up thickly. Ningtianya discovered that it wasn't according to the rule of first come, first served. Instead, some of the pearls that surged up to the first layer would also gradually rise to the second and third layers. And many of the pearls that appeared later also entered the first layer. Slowly, the pearls jumped, and the first pearl appeared on the 10th layer. The path of this pearl was so difficult. It tumbled and crashed all the way, trekking over mountains and rivers. Ningtianya was actually stunned. A thought suddenly welled up in his heart. Among these pearls, are there any that can go up to the 10th layer? At this moment, the pearls on the first and second layers, they had already started to fall, dripping from the tree and entering the water. The moment they entered the water, the pearls immediately dissolved and turned into clear water. Then, the water flowed back to the path and was washed up by the rolling waves. They formed pearls again and rolled forward again and again. That little person was in the process of those pearls appearing and disappearing in the rolling waves. He sat there seriously, as if he was practicing martial arts. As for Ningtianya, he suddenly had a kind of enlightenment, or a clear understanding. This realization made him shudder. Then he fell into a strange state. He finally realized that wasn't this tree equivalent to a world? Wouldn't these 10 layers of the tree be equivalent to the various levels of a human? And those little pearls that came from nothing, disappeared, and then reappeared again and again, weren't they the same as people? Could the pool below be the great river of samsara? And that bridge, was it the bridge of rebirth? A single person had transformed from the river of samsara into chaos. Then, he would transform into the purest soul, and enter the bridge of rebirth to begin a new life, and a new cycle of reincarnation. When they entered this world, everyone was on the first level. Then as they struggled, some people reached the second level. Then, he reached the third floor. Everyone was struggling. Some people struggled their entire lives to be at the bottom, so they eventually fell from the bottom. It turned into nothingness. As for some experts, they reached the third level, the fifth level, and even the 10th level. But their lives will come to an end. And once they reached a certain limit, if they couldn't climb to the next level, they would also fall into the great river of samsara. There was no difference. Only a few people who were especially persistent would continue to climb and surpass them, one level after another. But where was the end? Was it on these 10 layers? Ningtianya held his breath and watched. Now as the water continued to flow, more and more pearls appeared. Gradually, it reached a certain number and didn't increase anymore. At every moment, countless pearls fell from the tree and shattered. But there were also countless pearls that surged into the tree, jumping and rolling forward. Entering and exiting were basically equal. It maintained a rather stable state. The number of pearls on the upper layer was gradually increasing. Although it was so difficult to add one more pearl, it was still increasing slowly. Slowly, there were 5 out of the 10 layers. Then, one of them suddenly jumped and went up to the 11th layer. Ningtianya's heart skipped a beat. It was as if he had jumped from 8th grade supreme martial artist to second-grade supreme martial artist. There was another pearl that was also jumping forward with the flow of the water, but it missed and fell from the 10th layer into the pool, turning into powder. Ning Tianya suddenly felt a sense of sadness. Ning Tianya had seen this pearl that had jumped from the lowest layer to the 10th layer with difficulty. It was a disaster at every step, but it fell down here. The water continued to flow, and the pearls continued to roll. At every layer, there were conflicts and accumulations, just like all kinds of battles in the world. Some were borrowing force to exert force, some were moving flowers to replace trees, some were colliding left and right, some were going up and down, and some were stepping on others to jump up. In short, they were all trying their best to fight for opportunities for themselves, trying their best to fight for a future for themselves, and trying their best to fight for more time for themselves. Finally, there were pearls that jumped up to the 13th layer, the 15th layer, the 70th layer. Wherever the pearls went, the water would also follow. As long as the first one went up to a new layer, then the others behind would jump up one after another. The higher they went, the fewer pearls there were. Finally, they reached the 10th layer. The pearls on this layer seemed to have reached a bottleneck. More and more pearls came up, but none of them could go up to the 11th layer. Therefore, on this lofty 10th layer, these pearls began to fight and collide with each other again. Then countless pearls fell from the high 10th layer. After a long time, these 10th layer actually became like the first layer. And then new jumps began 11th, 12th, all the way to the 18th layer. They began to gather, fight, work hard, and struggle again. Then finally, a pearl suddenly jumped up to the 10th layer. The 10th layer. There was only one tree that could accommodate one pearl. New pearls jumped up, but were knocked down by the original pearl. New pearls were knocked down again. But this one that was always on top, although it was only by itself, was also jumping toward the endless void. It seemed to be still exploring. Was there a new layer above it? Finally, at that moment, the pearl leaped high into the air. But it did not land back on the tree. Instead, it deviated from its direction and fell from the 10th layer. It fell into the pool. At this moment, Ning Tianya's heart was simply heavily shocked. It turned out that one would also fall after reaching the 10th layer. Then the process continued. Finally, the little guy seemed to have stopped. He put down his hand with a tired look on his face. Then he took a deep breath. All the pearls suddenly fell into the pool and disappeared. The waves calmed down. That strange bridge also disappeared. This small tree in the pool. It also returned to its original inconspicuous appearance. The little fellow heaved a sigh of relief and walked onto the shore with his butt bare. His little butt swayed and nodded continuously. He looked at it for a while with some self-pity and said, "Sigh, it's finally another cycle. It's so hard." Ning Tianya's heart skipped a beat. He was indeed practicing martial arts. What kind of martial arts was this? This kind of divine martial arts was actually practiced with the world as the prototype, letting the person practicing martial arts drift away from the world, or the whole world. Was it all under the control of the person practicing martial arts? At the thought of this, Ning Tianya suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He was just coldly watching the rise and fall of all living things, while practicing martial arts himself? Then the little brat put on his open-crotch pants and swaggered away. That tree was actually left in the pool? Ning Tianya was a little moved at once. With his own knowledge, what kind of flowers and trees on this continent didn't he know? But he had never seen such a tree. It must be extraordinary. Of course, Ning Tianya wasn't so greedy as to covet a little kid's things. He just wanted to study it. Seeing that there was no one around, Ning Tianya floated down from the tree like a wisp of smoke. The next moment, he was already at the side of the pool. Tilting his head, he looked at this strange little tree. It was now standing quietly at the pool, motionless. Every piece of it was needle-shaped like a pine tree. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes just now, he really wouldn't have believed that this tree could actually have such a change. Ning Tianya waved his hand, and that tree automatically came to the side of the pool. Ning Tianya reached out and gently stroked the tree. He didn't find anything unusual. Therefore, he wanted to pull down a piece of the tree to take a look. But when he used his strength, he felt a piercing pain on his fingertips. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. With his current cultivation, not to mention a tree, even a divine weapon that could cut iron like mud, and a supreme martial artist, might not be able to cut through his skin with all his strength. But now, it was actually pierced by a small piece of tree. And it was when he was activating his divine technique. This was practically inconceivable. Ning Tianya was still in shock when something even more inconceivable happened. Ning Tianya found that he couldn't move at all. This matter was laughable. A second-grade supreme martial artist, who was already qualified enough to go up to the heavenly imperial court, was pierced by a tree in the lower three heavens. Then his whole body was paralyzed, and he couldn't even blink his eyes. Puffed. Supreme martial artist Ning sat down on the ground miserably. With his eyes wide open, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and assumed a rather comical posture. He didn't move at all. "There's a thief!" a childish voice shouted. "He's stealing my tree." It was the voice of that little boy just now. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A figure flew over at once extremely fast. A strange voice said respectfully, "Greetings, great master. I'll deal with this audacious fellow right away." Ning Tianya felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Then another person came. He heard someone coming from afar. Everyone knelt down together. "Your Majesty." Then, that strange eunuch voice began to report this matter. A bright yellow silhouette took 2 steps forward. It seemed as if he was observing Ning Tianya. Then, a dignified voice faintly resounded. "Puny little thief. Push him out and behead him." Chapter 1362. In that instant, Ning Tianya felt as if he was struck by lightning. He was very clear about his body's current condition. Right now he couldn't use any strength at all. It could be said that his head would be chopped off by an ordinary knife. In that case, he would become the first low-grade supreme martial artist to be beheaded in this world. Being tied up and beheaded? At the thought of this, Ning Tianya almost fainted, even if he had long seen through life and death. But he couldn't die like this. It was too embarrassing and too aggrieving. Ning Tianya's eyes darted around desperately, but he didn't have any strength at all, let alone the ability to speak. 2 guards rushed up like wolves and tigers. They took out a hemp rope and tied great supreme martial artist Ning up, hanging him upside down. With a puff, a piece of rag was stuffed into his mouth. At this moment, Ning Tianya's mood was really very strange. Could it be that this old man came down in such a hurry, just to be beheaded at this moment? Tai Butian waved her hand, indicating for him to be escorted out. Feng Qiuyang's eyes darted around. He took a step forward and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, for this old man to be able to sneak into the palace without anyone noticing, he's obviously not someone to be trifled with. I'm worried that could he be from the higher-ups?" Tai Butian's gaze hardened. Feng Qiuyang said carefully, "If your Majesty doesn't mind, you can hand this old man over to me. I'll definitely make him say whatever he wants to say, and serve him until he's comfortable." Tai Butian frowned and said, "All right, bring him back for interrogation. If it's really him, then I'll hand him over to you." Feng Qiuyang happily bowed. "Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty. I'll definitely do my best." After he finished speaking, he fiercely kicked Ning Tianya's buttocks and said, "Everyone, send this old fart to my room. I want to properly deal with this old fart. What kind of confidence does he have? He actually dares to behave atrociously in the palace? Black smoke is really rising from his ancestral graves. How would the guards know who this chief manager Feng was?" Seeing this wretched look, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. They couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Falling into your hands is the real shame of this old thing's ancestral grave. Tai Butian frowned and said, "Qinyang, don't make it too disgusting." Feng Qiuyang nodded and bowed. "This servant obeys the imperial edict." As he spoke, he followed the instructions and carried Ning Tianya away. Along the way, he rubbed his fists and grinned evilly. Of course, Qinyang definitely didn't know what kind of trash she was carrying back. If she really knew that this old bastard was actually the #1 expert of the heavenly layer, Ning Tianya, Feng Qiuyang would probably be so scared that he wet himself on the spot. Unfortunately, he didn't know. Of course, Ning Tianya also heaved a sigh of relief. Now he could already feel that the internal energy in his dantian was starting to move slowly. After all, There was no one in the world who could really paralyze a peak-grade supreme martial artist and make him unable to move for a long time. Being able to numb him for such a short period of time was already unexpected. Since he wasn't going to be beheaded on the spot, Ning Tianya wasn't afraid. However, he secretly gritted his teeth. This damn eunuch is so wretched and disgusting. He even kicked my butt. How could this be tolerated? The butt of the #1 expert in the world, who was at the peak of middle-grade supreme martial artist. Is it something a eunuch like you can kick? You must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall. I'd like to see how you're going to deal with me. Feng Qiliang didn't think so. Although he said it casually, he was certain that this old bastard must be the experts of the Lan clan. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for there to be such a person in the lower three heavens. To be able to sneak into the palace without his surveillance. This matter was of great importance. He had to pry open this old bastard's mouth at the first instant to see how many people the Lan clan had sent, and who was leading the team. What were their plans? Was it to kill or plunder? If so, how should he deal with it? What about the emperor? What about the emperor? How could he get out of this disaster? In the eyes of Feng Qiliang, these were all urgent problems. Therefore, he carried Ning Tianya into his room and threw him on the ground. He waved his hand to order the guards to leave and prepared to start the interrogation. Old bastard, I know your background, Feng Qiliang said coldly. Don't think that just because you don't talk, I can't find out where you're from. Hurry up and tell me the truth so that we can have fun together. As he spoke, he pulled down the rag on Ning Tianya's mouth, bent down and asked very oppressively. Ning Tianya widened his eyes but still couldn't speak. Feng Qiliang snorted and thought to himself, that tree of the little ancestor is an obvious trap. I've fallen into it once and was paralyzed for a whole day. This time, it seems that this old bastard also needs a whole day, right? However, he didn't have that much time. Rolling his eyes, he grabbed a jar of wine and opened the mud seal with a bang. He put on a fake smile and said, Old bastard, you fucking reached the point where I'll feed you wine personally. Alcohol would flow through the blood vessels. With the blood boiling, one would gradually be able to move. At the very least, it could dilute the anesthetic. This was common knowledge. He grabbed Supremacy Ning's chin roughly with one hand and forced his mouth open. Then, a jar of wine was poured into his mouth. The effect was very obvious. Ning Tianya originally lacked a little external force. Once the wine entered his stomach, the power of the wine immediately flowed through his meridians. In an instant, the primordial qi that was sealed in his dantian burst out like a flood and flowed through his whole body, recovering instantly. Feng Qiliang rubbed his chin and smiled sinisterly. Old bastard, I see that your eyes have become more agile and your tongue can move. Don't lie to me that you still can't speak, hehe. You'd better be sensible and behave yourself. Otherwise, haha, there are many guards in this palace who like you. Ning Tianya looked at him strangely and said hoarsely, What do you want me to say? Feng Qiliang laughed and snapped his fingers. You can indeed speak. Come. Tell me the purpose of your visit. If you're straightforward, I can still give you. Ning Tianya looked at him strangely. Feng Qiliang went up to him proudly. Be sensible. You're now a little white rabbit in the hands of a big bad wolf. Before he finished his words, he was suddenly dumbfounded. He saw that the little white rabbit in the hands of a big bad wolf suddenly had a strange look in his eyes. Then, he gently pulled his hands outwards, and the thick hemp rope on his body suddenly broke into pieces. Fuck! He's an expert! Feng Qiliang was shocked and grabbed over with his hands like an eagle's claws. He who strikes first gains the upper hand. He didn't know what was going on. Feng Qiliang realized that his hands were grabbed by the other party, and then half of his body couldn't move. Then there was a loud slap. A loud sound, but his face was fiercely slapped. Damn eunuch! Supremacy Ning scolded in a low voice angrily. You've got guts. You even know that you're a little white rabbit. Feng Qiliang was already stunned. At this moment it was too late for regrets. He had thought that he was a big bad wolf who had caught a little white rabbit in its nest. Who would have thought that he was a little white rabbit who had caught a big bad wolf who was full of vigor? After a series of slaps, Supremacy Ning then started to ask about the matter. However, Although General Manager Feng's martial arts were not as good as Supremacy Ning's, his bones were extremely tough, and he actually resisted to death. This made Ning Tianya very angry. This guy was also on Chu Yang's side. He couldn't really beat him to death, right? I'm here to help you. Ning Tianya roared angrily, only feeling extremely conflicted. And it was Chu Yang who begged me that I came. You bunch of bastards. Supremacy Ning felt extremely wronged. You actually used a child to set up such a sinister trap. You tricked me. These few words exploded on Feng Qiuyang's head like thunder in spring. He felt a wave of dizziness. Just from this sentence alone, it could be proved, because Ning Tianya had pointed out Chu Yang right from the start. And Lan's family, they didn't know Chu Yang. Feng Qiuyang was like a duck that had been shocked silly by lightning. He stammered, "This. Do you know?" Ning Tianya snorted angrily and gritted his teeth. "That little bastard. You're Chu Yang's son, right? That emperor who wants to behead me is the woman that bastard Chu Yang hooked up with, right? What else do you have to say?" Feng Qiuyang became well-behaved at once. If even this point was pointed out, then it definitely couldn't be wrong. He groaned and asked, "May I know Elder's name?" Ning Tianya glared. "I'm Ning." At this point, he suddenly shut up and roared angrily out of humiliation. "Don't tell me you still want to know my name and then use this matter to make fun of me." Feng Qiuyang was also conflicted. "If you don't say your name, how can I introduce you to Her Majesty?" Ning Tianya was stunned and said in a voice that he couldn't bear to recall, "I'm Ning Tianya." As he spoke, he almost wanted to bang his head against the wall. Bam! Feng Qiuyang sat down on the ground, already dizzy and disoriented. His eyes widened, almost popping out of their sockets. His lips trembled, and his whole body trembled. He said agitatedly as if he had seen a deity, You're Ning Tianya? Supremacy Ning? Elder Ning?" Ning Tianya nodded speechlessly, and heaved a long sigh. "Today my illustrious reputation is destroyed in a day." With a poof, Feng Qiuyang fell to the ground, twitching all over. He was so agitated that he wanted to die. "My God! It's Ning Tianya! My God, I kicked Ning Tianya's butt! My God!" With a bam, Ning Tianya kicked his butt hard. "You'd better forget about this or else." Humph, humph, humph. Feng Qiuyang nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. "What's your name?" Ning Tianya asked, conflicted. I'm Feng Qiuyang." Feng Qiuyang trembled with fear. "Elder Ning can call me Qinyang." "Are you really a eunuch?" Ning Tianya asked, holding on to a glimmer of hope. After all, being kicked in the butt by a eunuch was definitely different from being kicked in the butt by a normal person. Feng Qiuyang nodded miserably. "For now, I should be. This matter is really hard to explain." "Hard to explain." Ning Tianya's face contorted. A moment later, Chief Steward Feng, whose face was bruised and swollen, appeared in front of Tai Butian with Ning Tianya in high spirits. And second update. I'll continue to write and catch up on the chapters. Gee, today, I went out and entrusted the New Year shopping and other matters to my cousin. It's a custom in the countryside here. Every big clan collectively slaughters pigs and goats, and then each family lines up to collect them. Then, the family dinner lasts for a few days. But this year my father's health is not good, so he can't go. As for me, I obviously have to dedicate my time to everyone. If my wife goes, it's naturally even more inappropriate. So cough cough. I specially invited my cousin to a table today to handle this matter. Then, I'll seize the time to catch up on the chapters, and explode a few more times. Then, I'll prepare for the new year with everyone. Just thinking about the new year makes me excited. I can set off firecrackers again. Chapter 1363. Tai Butian was shocked to find out that the old man in front of her was actually the #1 expert in the world, Ning Tianya. Although Ning Tianya looked calm and composed on the surface, he was also extremely embarrassed in his heart. After all, this was a little too comical. He was here to help someone, but he was knocked out by a 1-year-old child instead. Not to mention Ning Tianya. Even if the Saint Tian K was here, he would probably be too ashamed to show his face. But Tai Butian only used one sentence to resolve Ning Tianya's embarrassment. "If there really is happiness in this world, then I have it now." Thank you, Senior Ning. Ning Tianya was the most embarrassed, but he was also moved by this sentence. Because Ning Tianya was invited by Chu Yang. As a woman who had been separated from her beloved for a long time, receiving help from her beloved at the most difficult time was a great blessing to Tai Butian. Ning Tianya's arrival meant that there was nothing wrong. Then, it also guaranteed Tai Butian's happiness in the future. Like a stabilizing needle, Ning Tianya's arrival was absolutely uplifting. Tai Butian used such a tactful method to express her joy and satisfaction. Ning Tianya needed to think before he could understand. And it was in this time of thinking that all his embarrassment was blown away by the wind just like that. And to a certain extent, it also resolved some of the hostility in Ning Tianya's heart. After all, the empress in front of him was his disciple's love rival. But now, there was no empress in front of Ning Tianya, only an ordinary woman, who felt extremely happy, because of a little concern from her beloved. Since I am here today, I will naturally not let Chu Yang down. Ning Tianya smiled and said, I will do my best to ensure the safety of your Majesty's mother. Although Ning Tianya was very confident, he still didn't say everything. Tai Butian said seriously, if Senior Ning is confident, please protect the safety of the people of the lower three heavens. This storm arose because of Chu Yang, because of me. But I don't want anyone in this world to suffer because of this. Suffer. Since I ascended the throne, the world is at peace, and there is no trouble in the world. The people are recuperating, and the suffering of the war a few years ago has already recovered slightly in these few years. Currently, the people were living in peace. However, this kind of happiness was not easy to come by, and was very fragile. If there was a huge battle at this time, or if there was an earth-shattering battle between experts, it would definitely cast a shadow over the hearts of the people, and they might even be hurt. So, I'll have to trouble Senior Ning. Ning Tianya sighed and said, of course. At this moment, Ning Tianya actually felt some admiration for this female emperor. It was rare for him to experience such moments. But this time, it was because of Tai Butian's magnanimity. In the eyes of ordinary people, if someone knew the inside story, they would definitely think, your husband is the master of Calamity Sword, who soars above the sky. As long as you follow me, you will have endless glory, splendor, wealth, and power. Compared to the power of life and death held by the gods in the sky, the imperial power of the secular world was incomparable. They simply couldn't be compared. After all, in the eyes of the strong, the common people of the world were just ants. However, Tai Butian was a woman. She scrupulously abided by her duty, and relied on her own strength to seek happiness for the people of the world. This responsibility was not something that could be easily thrown away. Ning Tianya had already been in the lower three heavens for a few days. But everywhere he went, everyone was full of praise for this emperor. Wise words could be heard incessantly. This was the most honest evaluation from the people at the bottom of the world. Such an emperor was rare since ancient times. What's more, this emperor was even a woman. Ning Tianya said softly, when this matter is over, your Majesty can accompany little brother Chu Yang to roam the world and laugh proudly at the heavens. Wouldn't that be great? Tai Butian's gaze was somewhat misty and yearning, but then, she took a deep breath and said softly, responsibility lies in the heart and shoulders. Everyone has their own responsibilities. She smiled lightly. In the eyes of the supreme martial artists, or the so-called immortals and saints in the secular world, the common people of the world are just ants. They don't take them seriously at all. But which saint or deity in the world didn't evolve from the body of an ant? No matter where you are, if you forget your ant origins, even if you are the ruler of the heavens, I can also say that you have forgotten your roots. And what right do people who have forgotten their roots have to talk about the great Tao? If one can ignore the suffering of the world after becoming immortals and saints, then what's the use of becoming immortals and saints? Chu Yang has Chu Yang's mission and I also have my responsibilities. Tai Butian looked at the mountains and rivers outside the Great Hall and said slowly, my responsibilities are these mountains and rivers, and the people of this world. Even an ant has an ant's happiness. They also have the right to be happy. If others can't bring them happiness, then my responsibilities will always be on my shoulders. Emperors don't discriminate between men and women. They only care about political affairs. I am the emperor. Being the emperor is a job, not an honor. As a woman, I can't be the best. But as an emperor, it's not something that can be given up easily. Just closing one's eyes can cause millions of people to suffer unspeakably. Just slacking off can cause millions of people to be in poverty. Tai Butian's eyes dimmed for a moment. She said, others may be a woman first, and then have other identities, but I have to be an emperor first before I can talk about being a woman. Ning Tianya stopped talking. Tai Butian's words were from the bottom of her heart. In front of people like Ning Tianya, there was no way to fake it. Ning Tianya could feel every single word that wasn't said from the bottom of her heart. But all the way until Tai Butian finished speaking, Ning Tianya only felt absolute sincerity. Supremacy. Ning couldn't help but let out a long sigh in his heart. He really didn't know what kind of luck Chu Yang had to have such an extraordinary woman fall in love with him. Such a woman made Ning Tianya speechless. Ning Tianya only rejoiced in his heart. If his disciple competed fairly with her, he might really lose. After a moment of silence, even Ning Tianya didn't know why he suddenly said, Chu Yang's woman is my disciple, my only brother. Tai Butian didn't seem surprised. She just smiled. Elder, what do you mean? Actually, Ning Tianya already wanted to slap himself when he said that. He was even more speechless now. Chu Yang already has someone he loves. I've long known about it, so I've always kept my feelings a secret. Tai Butian seemed to be explaining something. She laughed bitterly and said, I don't like to fight with others, nor do I like others to fight with me. If he hadn't been poisoned back then, he would never have known about my identity. After that, I found out that I was pregnant. Tai Butian pursed her lips and said, At that time, I even wanted to use the palace's secret prescription to abort the child. I didn't want to be a burden to him, nor did I want to give him a reason to accept me. But I'm still a woman after all. I'm still selfish. Tai Butian said self-deprecatingly. Firstly, I can't bear to have a child with a man I approve of. Secondly, as a mother, I can't bear to. Thirdly, Iron Cloud also needs an heir. Among the direct descendants of the Iron Cloud royal family, I'm the only one left. If I don't have an heir, it will definitely end here. Elder can't possibly think that I, Tai Butian, am the kind of woman who can have a child with any random man. Tai Butian smiled mockingly and then said seriously, So, even if I'm scolded for being shameless because of this, I have no regrets. No woman would kill her own flesh and blood, just because someone else scolded her for being shameless. Even if I've caused harm to your disciple, I can only say sorry. Tai Butian laughed softly. Actually, your disciple is also one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to the upper three heavens to accompany Chu Yang. As women, we all understand each other. It's very difficult for me to face my guilt towards her, especially when we're face to face. I can still deceive myself and comfort myself here. But if, Tai Butian said heavily, somewhat dejectedly, Ning Tianya finally had nothing to say towards such a woman, even though he was still dissatisfied and even hostile when he came down. His heart was full of admiration at this moment. As a woman, she was flawless. As an emperor, she was invincible and also the most qualified. As a human, she was still a success. Ning Tianya heaved a long sigh and said sincerely, The emperor's name is Butian. No wonder he can really nourish the heavens. Tai Butian was silent for a moment. Then she said, Thank you for your compliment, elder. Ning Tianya stood up and said, I want to go and see little madam. Your Majesty, please allow me. Tai Butian nodded and smiled. Elder Ning, please go ahead. In my Iron Cloud, Elder Ning can go anywhere you want. Ning Tianya left with a smile, but he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. These few words kept echoing in Ning Tianya's heart. Which saint or deity didn't evolve from this insignificant body? No matter what stage you've reached, if you forget your insignificant origin, even if you're the ruler of the heavens, I can also say that you've forgotten your roots. And what right do people who have forgotten their roots have to talk about the great Tao? If becoming a deity or a saint means that one can ignore the suffering of the world, then what's the use of becoming a deity or a saint? In Ning Tianya's heart, these words were like the rolling thunder of the evening drum and morning bell, reverberating unceasingly. Every time, he seemed to have a new kind of understanding. When he thought of that little child, that tree, that strange world, Ning Tianya's heart had another layer of understanding. I, Ning Tianya, have been stuck at this bottleneck for more than 10,000 years. Now that I've accepted someone else's commission to come to the lower three heavens, I've instead obtained something that I've never even dreamed of before in this lower three heavens, that I've never taken a proper look at before. In the past, I was only worried that there was no path in front of me. But now, in this lower three heavens, everyone has actually pointed out a path for me. From having no path at all, it suddenly became two paths and became a fork in the road. Ning Tianya shook his head and laughed. This is really unexpected. However, the secret on that little fellow is even bigger. My gains from coming to the lower three heavens this time are too great. Chapter 1364. When Ning Tianya saw the little fellow was busy. He was looking at a black and white ball hanging in front of him, deep in thought like an adult. He was wearing open-crotch pants, and had a bold and unrestrained posture. He was sitting on the horse with his back bent, and his eyes looking straight ahead. In front of him, that black and white ball was hanging and swinging. Below his crotch, there was also a small lump hanging and swinging. Although the little fellow's face was very colorful, this kind of situation really made it hard for anyone to be serious. Although Ning Tianya was a little conflicted, he couldn't help but want to laugh. He held it in and walked over in front of the little fellow. Cough, little bastard. Ning Tianya was furious. He walked back and forth in front of him several times, but this fellow actually ignored him. Shoo! The little fellow raised a finger. He signaled him not to speak. Ning Tianya froze at once. The little fellow reached out and pointed to the side unquestionably. He shouted, "Stand aside and don't make a sound." Ning Tianya's eyes widened. He only felt that his eyes were about to pop out. Suddenly, there was a puff. Ning Tianya held his breath at once, his expression strange. The little fellow sighed. Why do I have to fart every day when I'm young? Although this kind of smell isn't very unpleasant to me, it's still very embarrassing when there are outsiders around. Ning Tianya's expression became even stranger at once, as if he had swallowed a fart alive. To be honest, although the fart just now was a little smelly, Ning Tianya could still bear it. However, this sentence was really somewhat unbearable for Ning Tianya. What are you doing? Ning Tianya had no choice but to ask seriously. The little fellow had a deep look on his face. Look. Ning Tianya followed his gaze and shook his head blankly. Look. The little fellow said mysteriously. Isn't this very vivid? Ning Tianya frowned. He tried his best to think from the perspective of Tao, but he realized, where did this image come from? So he shook his head in puzzlement. The little fellow looked at him very discontentedly. Look, isn't this very much like a ball? Ning Tianya suddenly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then white smoke violently billowed. Like a ball? What I want to do the most right now is to kick you out like a ball. That's a fucking ball to begin with. It's a ball. The little guy's face was so soft it could be broken by the wind. Pinching a bag of water with each pinch, he put on a profound posture and said, But this is a world. World. Ning Tianya's eyes widened. There's black and white on it. The little fellow said indifferently. Just like life. There is day, there is night, there is life. There is also death. Just like this universe, there is heaven and earth, yin and yang. Oh. Ning Tianya couldn't help but look at the black and white ball hanging in front of him, and carefully observed it. It was indeed black and white on the surface. Only black and white were two colors, like two strangely shaped fish. It even had one eye. But in the end, life and death, yin and yang. Heaven and earth. Black and white, heaven and earth. They're all on the same ball. The little fellow's childish voice said softly. Ning Tianya suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. To most people, this sentence might sound like, it's not a big deal, it's just how it is. This sentence was very common. But Ning Tianya was different, because he was already half detached from life and death. When he heard such a sentence at this moment, his mind was completely captivated by this sentence. Life and death, yin and yang, heaven and earth, they were all here. Or if they were here, they would still be here even if they were dead. No matter whether they were alive or dead, they wouldn't escape from this category. What did this mean? Ning Tianya suddenly felt a little dazed. The dazed state of ordinary people or the state of mind. But Ning Tianya's dazed state, when one reached this level, would generally be the precursor to an epiphany. The next moment, Ning Tianya felt that he had entered a wonderful state. Taiyang watched Ning Tianya enter that chaotic state with rapt attention, a strange glow in his eyes. After a long while he murmured, "The people in this world, it's not just because they're too poor, but also because their aptitude is too good. In the other world, the streets are full of supreme theories, but they can only be used as elementary textbooks. Other than learning to read, they can't think of anything else." He sighed heavily and murmured, "How could the seniors' thousands of years of hard work and inheritance be just for you to learn how to read? Heaven and earth, rain and wind, land and sky, could it be that they are only pairs? Heaven and earth are black and yellow. The universe is vast and desolate. Could it be that only elementary school students can read them, and that adults avoid them as much as possible? Once treasures are exposed to the outside world like bricks and stones, they don't seem precious anymore." Sigh. Ning Tianya seemed to have had a dream. He dreamed that he had gone through a reincarnation cycle from birth to death. He was born here, grew up here, and died here. He was in a strange circle from beginning to end. He remembered everything that happened when he was alive. And he also had clear memories of what happened after he died. For a moment, he couldn't help but compare life and death. But he felt bored to death and sighed deeply. Following this sigh, his whole person became clear-headed. In front of him, a little brat wearing open-crotch pants was looking at him with clear eyes. When Ning Tianya's eyes came into contact with this pair of eyes that didn't contain any impurities, he suddenly felt ashamed. He had experienced too much filth in his life, and now he saw such a pair of pure eyes again. "Your aptitude is not bad." The little fellow sighed, stared at Ning Tianya's eyes and said, "You've just advanced, right?" "No." Ning Tianya blushed a little. To be called aptitude is not bad, by a 1-year-old little fellow. Cough. For Ning Tianya, who was tens of thousands of years old, it really felt a little strange. If he had really advanced, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem was, he hadn't advanced. This was a little inexcusable. "You haven't advanced?" The little fellow's eyes bulged, as if he was greatly surprised. "You have obviously gained something, but you haven't advanced?" Even that eunuch Feng Qiliang advanced a level, when he heard it just now. Ning Tianya was so miserable that he almost wanted to hit the wall. "I'm the fucking #1 expert. But in this little fellow's eyes, I'm not even as good as a eunuch." He vomited blood and said, "What's Feng Qiliang's cultivation? What's my cultivation? For example, Feng Qiliang only needs 1 grain of rice to advance. I'll advance. But I need a field. You." At this point he suddenly shut his mouth. Damn it, why am I telling this to a 1-year-old child? "That's true." The little child nodded deeply. The little thing in his crotch also swayed as he nodded. He said deeply, "Your cultivation is also almost at the entry level." Ning Tianya suddenly shut his mouth. His temples bulged, as if all the blood in his body was about to rush to the top of his head. "I'm almost at the entry level. Do you fucking know that this almost at the entry level person in front of you is the current #1 expert in the heavenly layer world? Is your father really Chu Yang?" Ning Tianya vomited blood and asked. The little fellow rolled his eyes in disdain. "Do you think others are qualified?" Ning Tianya felt like fainting again. "I have martial virtues, benevolent, righteous and wise. In the future, I'll rule the world and benefit the common people. I'll unify the martial world," the great elder said solemnly. "Other than my father, who else is worthy of a son like me?" Ning Tianya coughed twice, resisting the urge to vomit blood. He asked, "Is the window open?" The little fellow said mysteriously, "I never open the window. I've always been open and aboveboard. I only go through the front door." After a long time, Ning Tianya suddenly had a thought. "Are you the reincarnation of some mighty person?" The little fellow looked at him in disdain. He asked, "Did you see one?" "One." Ning Tianya was stunned. "It's that tree." The little fellow said indifferently, "That tree is the world. That pool is the netherworld. That area is the netherworld. That bridge is the passageway between humans and ghosts. Humans are originally nothing but a speck of dust. Along with the surging waters of the netherworld, they enter the passageway between humans and ghosts, and are reborn as humans. It is only when they step onto the first level of the world that they gain consciousness and begin to struggle. No matter which level they climb to, they will never be able to break free from the heavens with their own strength alone. Therefore, no matter what level they are at, they can only perish in the end. After perishing, they enter the netherworld again. No matter how high they were when they were alive, they will only be returned to their original state by the water wheel of reincarnation. In other words, only a speck of dust with no consciousness can repeat itself. Therefore, the so-called reincarnation of a mighty person is no different from an ordinary baby under such strict laws of heaven and earth. How could they have a genius like me? Ning Tianya frowned deeply. But this is definitely not the only case. That's because external forces are used to preserve a bit of the true spirit, the little fellow said disdainfully. However, using external forces to preserve the true spirit is ultimately not one's own instinct. Therefore, one's future achievements are also limited. Without waiting for Ning Tianya to speak, the little fellow smiled strangely. This world has also been around for 1,000,000 years. Among the generations of experts, which one of them was a reincarnation of a mighty person, and climbed to the highest peak. Ning Tianya was stunned. When Ning Tianya went to the Heaven Imperial Court, he had heard about the reincarnation of a mighty person, and was sure that it really existed. However, from what he knew, among the few sovereigns who stood at the peak of the Heaven Imperial Court, there really wasn't such a person. One's own nature and heart is the strongest weapon. One's own body is the sturdiest treasure raft to transcend the world. The little fellow was disdainful. Using external forces or weapons, or medicinal power, is impossible. Where do spirit weapons come from? Made by humans. Where do spirit medicines come from? Human synthesis. Where does heaven and earth come from? Human development. Using external forces, and abandoning one's own body. How can one reach the peak? Ning Tianya was horrified and moved. He asked modestly, "May I ask, what kind of martial arts did you use that tree to cultivate?" The little fellow smiled. "That is the origin technique. Using all the origin between heaven and earth, extracting its essence and removing its impurities, to form the great Tao, and establish the origin." Ning Tianya seemed to have understood something. If that tree is the world, then the tree is still very small. The little fellow said enigmatically, "When one is in the water and looks at this tree, it is the world. However, at your position at that time, outside the world, there is still a vast sky." Ning Tianya suddenly remembered that the tree in the pond in the imperial garden was only that small. Outside, there was the entire palace, the vast mountains and rivers of the lower three heavens, the upper three heavens, and the Heaven Imperial Court. Then was the Heaven Imperial Court also as small as this tree in this universe? Chapter 1365. In the next 2 days, Ning Tianya naturally became the little fellow's protector. He would follow him wherever he went. The relationship between the old and the young actually warmed up rapidly. They stuck together every day. No one knew what they were doing. Tai Butian was greatly comforted by this situation. With Ning Tianya by her side, nothing could go wrong. Of course, Tai Butian didn't know the details of this old and young together. If he knew, the wise emperor would probably pass out. "Cough, Tai Yang, you should start talking today, right? How's that monkey? Has he come out from the bottom of the mountain?" Supremacy Ning asked. "What's the hurry?" The little fellow rolled his eyes. "I still have to practice today." Supremacy Ning sighed. Suddenly, there was a feeling of rejuvenation. When he was teaching his disciple, he racked his brains to tell stories to his disciple. Now that he was protecting this little fellow, he actually had to rack his brains to beg this little fellow to tell him stories. Finally, one day, Ning Tianya asked, somewhat puzzled, "These things are very profound, but you told me about them the first time we met. Could it be that a child really can't keep things to himself?" "This is fate," the little fellow said mysteriously. "Fate?" Supremacy Ning was somewhat smug. It seemed that he was still very popular. This little fellow felt that he was fated and reliable the moment he saw him. Actually, I guessed wrongly. The little fellow suddenly said somewhat dejectedly, "You're here to protect us. But I've always felt that your cultivation isn't high, that you've just started. So I thought." Ning Tianya was stunned. Then the muscles on his face twitched, then twitched again, then twitched once more. At this moment, there was even some resentment. How good would it be if you only said the first explanation? It's fate. But the one that was added later, it was really better not to add it. But in these few days, if one were to talk about benefits, Ning Tianya really benefited the most. He was like a traveler who originally had nowhere to go. But suddenly several paths appeared in front of him. What kind of feeling was it when several paths suddenly appeared in front of a person who had nowhere to go in the desert, and each path led to an oasis? That was how Ning Tianya felt. Back then, when he first came to the Double Heaven Imperial Court, Ning Tianya already knew that his cultivation was far from enough. Otherwise, Shui Leihan wouldn't have specially asked him to watch over the heavens. He was suitable for this task. There were definitely many heavenly layers. Why did it choose him? Firstly, I came up from here. Secondly, I'm afraid it's because of my aptitude. Or maybe my future isn't that great. It would be a waste to stay up there. It would be better to return to the heavenly layer to do something. Ning Tianya had long been aware of this. Although he felt a sense of loss, he was well aware. This kind of thing could not be forced. But now, the combination of Tai Yang's words and Tai Butian's words had given Ning Tianya a huge opportunity. His aptitude might still be the same as before. There was absolutely no change. However, he had already seen a path that led to the heavens, and he knew where to go. To Ning Tianya, this was no less than an enormous fortune. One day, an old man and a young man were sitting under the world tree. Suddenly, Ning Tianya's expression changed. He felt something in his heart. There seemed to be something unusual. Did the Long clan come down? In fact, for the past few days, Ning Tianya had been wondering why the Long clan hadn't come down yet. Their speed was so slow. Their reaction was so slow. Of course, Supremacy Ning didn't know that the first batch had actually come down a long time ago. They were only one step behind him. However, that batch of people didn't stop and directly went down again. Feng Qiliang also sensed something and came over as fast as lightning. You look after the palace. Ning Tianya frowned. I'll go and intercept them directly. Feng Qiliang felt relieved and nodded repeatedly. The Long clan Great Elder and the rest came down. They didn't encounter any obstacles. Even when they reached Iron Cloud Citadel, it was still peaceful. For a moment, everyone was somewhat bewildered. Logically speaking, they should have been ambushed or met with some difficulties along the way. But now, everything was calm and tranquil. When they reached Iron Cloud Citadel, this feeling became stronger, even calmer. Moreover, the strange thing was that after searching the entire city, they actually couldn't sense any aura of the Long clan. Then, what about Grand Duke Lan Rua? What about the other supreme martial artist experts? Where did they go? Could it be that they had melted in the lower three heavens? After checking from many sides, they finally confirmed that there was absolutely no trace of them here. Great Elder, what do we do now? A high priest asked with a murderous look. Since we can't find them, then the only possibility is that it has something to do with the palace. The Great Elder's face was gloomy. Let's go to the palace and directly capture that emperor for interrogation. We'll definitely be able to get some information. Yes, it's just that there's no news of the Grand Duke and the rest. It's very likely that they've already been killed. Someone said. Everyone didn't say anything. Their expressions were equally cold. This wasn't just very likely, it was definitely. They've already been killed. From this point of view, there was already absolutely no possibility of cooperation between the two sides. Go to the palace. The Great Elder waved and led the group in the direction of the palace. Hundreds of people stepped forward at the same time. At this moment, it was as if tens of millions of troops were charging at the same time. Such a team of experts was definitely enough to topple the lower three heavens. Along the way, the crowd automatically turned and separated. A straight path appeared, leading straight to the palace. The wind howled and murderous aura filled the sky. Since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame us for being ruthless. That was what everyone thought in their hearts. They had just walked 1,000 feet when the crowd in front of them suddenly separated. A figure in light robes appeared lightly on the path that everyone had to pass. It was an extremely ordinary-looking old man. He looked at everyone with a smile on his face. It seemed that he was overjoyed to have friends from afar. "Everyone, where are you going?" the old man asked with a smile. "You are." The great elder's eyes revealed a guarded look. Could this old man be from the palace? The great elder found this old man somewhat familiar. However, even if he wanted to cripple his heart, he definitely wouldn't have thought that the #1 expert in the world, Ning Tianya, would actually appear here. Besides, after Ning Tianya had advanced twice, the aura on his body was already very different from before. He originally existed in the land of legends. The great elder and the rest actually couldn't recognize him because their memories were fuzzy. "I'm someone who's here to discuss something with all of you." Ning Tianya smiled extremely amiably. "How about we find a place to talk?" The great elder snorted. "You're someone from the palace?" "Yes, sort of." Ning Tianya nodded. "It just so happens that I also have something to ask you." The great elder waved his hand in a very stylish manner. "Lead the way. Follow me." Ning Tianya didn't take offense at all. He led the way. The direction that they were heading towards was actually surprisingly the same as when Chu Yang was here. The former site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. After a moment, "How about here?" Supremacy Ning said with a smile. "This place is surrounded by water and quiet. It's just right for a conversation." The great elder's sharp eyes swept over, and he said with a slight smile, "It's also suitable for other things." Ning Tianya narrowed his eyes. Yes, it's also very suitable for other things." Supremacy Ning also felt a little suffocated. "Although I only revealed an ordinary level of cultivation for fear of scaring all of you, it's still quite a few grades of supreme martial artist. Why were these few people so impolite? This old thing is quite stubborn." The third high priest gave him a sidelong glance. What else do you want to do to us here? Come over and kneel down. Listen to my questions." He was already full of anger to begin with, but when he came down, he actually discovered that he didn't know whether everyone here was dead or alive. Just as he was feeling depressed, he encountered such a top-notch old man. "Damn it, your level of cultivation is enough in the lower 3 heavens. But what kind of person was this man? How is that bit of cultivation of yours enough?" The second high priest hurriedly tried to persuade him. "Third brother, don't be impatient. Let's get to the bottom of this first. As long as the truth is out, this old man, won't third brother be able to deal with him however you want? In the blink of an eye, you'll be able to deal with him in 315 different ways." "Pooh," the third high priest spat. "Old bastard, you really don't have any discernment at all. If I don't serve him well later, I've really lived all these years in vain. In this world, this is just a half-assed person. It's this kind of half-baked person who thinks he's the best in the world. Motherfucker, do you think you're Ning Tianya?" Instantly, there was a roar of laughter. Ning Tianya's face darkened. "What the fuck are you talking about? Cough, all of you have also cultivated for thousands of years." Ning Tianya said with a solemn face. "As supreme martial artists, you must have some demeanor of a supreme martial artist. If you also curse like a shrew in the streets, then, aren't you afraid of losing your status? Losing your manners? Fuck you. Manners. Fuck your third great-uncle's manners." The third high priest was met with a mouthful of spit and scolded loudly. "If I still have to talk about manners with an ant like you, who do you think you are? You're actually teaching me a lesson with all 5 of you? Come, son. Grandpa will let you see what manners are." Ning Tianya's expression turned extremely ugly at once. The great elder had already found a high place and sat down. He shouted, "Third brother, don't be rash. Bring this old bastard over first. Let me interrogate him later." Ning Tianya turned his head somewhat incredulously and looked at the great elder of the Lan clan in astonishment. He had met this first elder once many years ago. At that time, the first elder's etiquette could be said to have reached a natural level, and he was respectful to the point of being meticulous. He had even praised him for a long time. He didn't expect that after so many years, when he had forgotten about him and only treated him as an ordinary person, he would actually be so vile and despicable. Or perhaps, these people were like this when facing people who were weaker than them, and manners were only used by people who were stronger than them. Chapter 1366. What are you looking at? The great elder rolled his eyes in displeasure. Come here and listen to my questions. Ning Tianya pointed at his own nose with a strange expression. You are calling me? The great elder frowned and said indifferently. If I'm not calling you, am I calling a dog? Calling a dog? Ning Tianya was directly petrified. Do you have to insult me like this? Even when I was facing the Emperor Shui Leihan, I've never been scolded like this. The sudden atmosphere made Ning Tianya almost unable to catch his breath. He had originally thought that if he could persuade them to go back, he would do so. After all, it was not suitable for him to participate in the battle between Tribulation and the big clans. But who would have thought that before he could speak, he would be scolded from head to toe? Someone pushed him from behind and scolded. What's the matter? Weren't you quite capable just now? Are you dumb now? Hurry up and get over there. Ning Tianya actually staggered from the push and came to the front of the great elder. The great elder snorted with some dissatisfaction and said, Let me ask you, where are the people from the Long clan, who came down the last time now? Ning Tianya took a deep breath. What? Why are you pretending to be muddle-headed? The third high priest flew into a rage and stepped forward. Are you deaf? I'm asking you a question. As he spoke, he raised his hand and was about to give him a big slap. Beat this old bastard to death. There was a commotion. Ning Tianya's body trembled a little in anger. It had really reached an unbearable level. Even this old man, the #1 expert in the world, has never bullied an ordinary person like this when faced with such a powerless person. It was too much of a bully. The next moment, Supremacy Ning erupted completely. Reaching out, he caught the third high priest's palm in a flash. The next moment, the crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. Then it was a heavy slap. It landed on the third high priest's face. With a loud smack, the third high priest's face suddenly tilted to one side. His hand trembled. The 7th grade supreme martial artist third high priest went limp like mud and knelt in front of Ning Tianya with a thud. The cruelty and pleasure on the third high priest's face had yet to be removed. He was struck down into the abyss. His face had yet to even turn into surprise. Everyone was stunned. Watching Ning Tianya take care of the third high priest so neatly, everyone's minds were filled with shock. No matter how careless the third high priest was, and how he was caught off guard, he shouldn't be so weak, right? Just by reaching out his hand he collapsed? This was a 7th grade supreme martial artist expert, transcending the boundary between immortal and mortal. A blood-curdling scream came from the mouth of the third high priest. Only now did he feel the pain. Ning Tianya merely grabbed lightly just now, and the bones in his right hand were already completely shattered. Just as the screams came out, he came to his senses and immediately shut his mouth tightly, enduring the pain. Kneel properly. Don't move. Don't randomly shout. Ning Tianya loosened his grip. He said indifferently. Following his indifferent voice, Ning Tianya felt a killing intent that had not risen in his heart for a long time. All of a sudden, a raging fire began to burn like boiling oil. These people had already touched Ning Tianya's bottom line. So you're an expert. Cold sweat broke out on the third high priest's face from the pain. But he raised his head with a hideous smile and tried to slowly stand up. But even if you're an expert in front of so many people, what can you do? Ning Tianya sneered. I told you to kneel. Didn't you hear? All of a sudden, the aura all over his body gushed out like a torrent. At the moment when Ning Tianya released his aura without reservation, above the sky, the wind and clouds changed color. The entire lower 3 heavens felt this powerful pressure at the same time. And this pressure spread far and wide. Everyone was trembling with fear at the same time. These people from the Long clan, who were facing him directly, were the first to bear the brunt, and felt the terror of this power even more. The third high priest, who had just lifted his knees from the ground, suddenly knelt back down fiercely with a thud. The force was so great that everyone even heard a crisp crack sound. Immediately, a circle of blood stains spread out on the ground. With this kneel, both of his knees were crushed. But he forgot about the pain. There was only endless fear in his heart. The great elder had long been scared out of his wits. He never imagined that this old man who looked like he could be trampled on at will was actually such a terrifying expert. At this moment, Ning Tianya's aura, together with his face, finally reminded the great elder of a distant memory. A legendary figure, who had already become a legend. Suddenly his face turned ghastly pale. That was when he was young and unintentionally saw that dragon-like figure. At that time, he was in a state of worship, and under the introduction of his elders, he paid his respects to that person. Since then, he hadn't seen him for thousands of years. But at this moment, he suddenly recalled, why does that person's face in that already blurry memory look so similar to this old man in front of him? You, who are you? The second high priest tried his best to circulate his energy to resist this terrifying aura. Many of the others had already collapsed on the ground. Some of them couldn't even move at all. Under the awe of such a terrifying aura, moving one's little finger was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. My surname is Ning. Ning Tianya said indifferently. My name is Ning Tianya. Boom. At this moment, everyone from the Long clan felt as if the sky had collapsed. Ning Tianya, the #1 expert of the heavenly layer, the person whom they were pointing at and cursing at in every possible way, just now was actually the Ning Tianya, whom they worshipped like a god? Elder Ning. The great elder knelt down with a thud. The muscles on his face were contorted, and he couldn't speak properly. It's us juniors who failed to recognize Mount Tai. Ning Tianya let out a long sigh and said bleakly, I came here with the intention of protecting 2 people, and then persuading all of you to go back. That's all. But I'd never thought that the first time in my life that I would be called a bastard would actually be today. Ning Tianya shook his head. In all my life, I've always done things with a clear conscience. But today I've been scolded as a dog. Similarly, this is also the first time in my life. For the first time in my life, I've been pointed at by someone and need to kneel down before I can reply. This world, it's really changed so much that I can't understand it anymore. Ning Tianya sighed. It's really the new generation replacing the old. The new generation replaces the old. The great elder's body trembled. Elder, please spare my life. On account of, today is still the first time in my life for me to have such a strong murderous intent. I won't talk about how many sins you usually commit with such actions. It's just because you've offended me today. Ning Tianya said calmly. Get up and fight with me. Kill me. You can do whatever you want in the lower 3 heavens. Kill you? The great elder almost cried out loud. If all of us could kill you, then would you, Ning Tianya, still be alive? What a joke. Fight with you? The only one in the lower heavens who was qualified to fight with you was Bulu Qing. Perhaps the Dharma Supreme, Lord Wu or the Moon Breeze couple had such strength. But it definitely wasn't us. Today, I have the intention to kill. I must kill you. Ning Tianya's eyes gradually revealed a sharp murderous intent. So stand up and fight with me. Don't make me look down on the Long clan. Elder Ning, please spare my life. I really don't know. There were pleas for mercy. Fight. What a joke. Facing Ning Tianya, who dared to fight with him. Even if the elder master of the Long clan, Lan Buhui, was here, they definitely wouldn't dare to say that they would fight with Ning Tianya. The disgust between Ning Tianya's brows became more and more intense. If they could stand up and fight with Ning Tianya might even sigh at how they dared to take responsibility for their actions. Maybe there would be a turn for the better. But now, Ning Tianya only felt disgust. Could it be that you can only bully some very weak people? When you meet a strong person, you become soft shrimps. Since when did the once all-powerful clan become like this? Since that's the case, go to hell. Ning Tianya heaved a long sigh. His fingers fell and slapped the third high priest's forehead. With a soft sound, the third high priest's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. His body slowly went limp and fell to the ground. Ning Tianya's murderous intent had been triggered. He didn't care whether others resisted or not. Murderous intent was never triggered easily, but once it was triggered, it couldn't be stopped. In this world, there really wasn't anyone who could escape from Ning Tianya's pursuit. Thud, thud, thud. Another 3 people fell to the ground. Fight! Even if he's Ningtianya, so what? Everyone attacked together. The great elder flew up, the fear in his eyes turning into madness. But the moment he rushed forward, he kicked an unlucky person up with the tip of his foot to face Ningtianya, while he himself retreated like a ghost. Ningtianya let out a long sigh and slapped out a hand. The great elder, who was retreating, suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. He felt a wave of numbness, and then fell from the sky. The Long clan people rushed up from all directions. A trace of pity flashed across Ningtianya's eyes. He suddenly attacked with all his might, showing no mercy. In just half a cup of tea's time, Ningtianya walked out of the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. His green clothes were spotless. He stood in front of the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion and paused for a moment. He murmured, "The Long clan should be finished." Then he turned around and walked toward the palace without looking back. Inside the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, it was peaceful. Not even a trace of blood could be seen. Those who had participated in the battle just now had already disappeared. Perhaps they could only be found by digging up the soil under their feet. What Ningtianya didn't know was that the last batch of Long clan people, who came to Iron Cloud, had been killed by Chu Yang and buried here. Now, the corpses of the Long clan people were once again buried on this piece of land. Both batches were the elites of the Long clan. They gathered here. For some reason, ever since Chu Yang left this place seemed to have become a good graveyard. Chu Yang chose to kill here. Similarly, Ningtianya also chose this place. While Ningtianya was killing, Chu Yang and his brothers were also carrying out the same task. Chapter 1367. Tianlan City entered a dark and gloomy period of reconstruction work. Emotianji was really bold. He directly recruited all the manpower that could be mobilized. Hundreds of thousands of people were working here. Orders came out of Emotianji's mouth like flowing water. There was no chaos at all. A group of people was in charge of demolishing and flattening the half-ruined houses. Following closely was a group of people in charge of cleaning. They picked out useful materials and piled them at one side. Following closely behind, people started to set up tents. The other 4 groups of people mobilized people from all directions to live in tents first. At the same time, several groups of people started to cook. At the same time, construction started in the areas that were rumbling past. All the doctors in the city were united and divided into 8 groups. They went to 8 directions to treat the injured first. Some doctors were unwilling to work for nothing. They had just raised their conditions when Emotianji ordered them to be beheaded. Those who did not listen to orders could do so. Those whose heads were useful could be used as a public display. Those who wanted to take advantage of the situation could do so. Their heads were useful too. No matter who they were or how high their status was, those who did not listen to orders now would be killed. Emotianji used an iron-blooded and ruthless method to carry out this task in a cold, calm, and efficient manner. A few nearby vassal clans of the Long clan were completely taken in by Emotianji. 2 clans wanted to resist. At Emotianji's command, the Tribulation Brothers immediately took action. In the middle of the night, tens of thousands of heads were piled up like a mountain. Severe punishment is needed in troubled times, Emotianji said. Killing is a crime, but killing 1 person to save 2 is a merit. Emotianji said. Those who take advantage of the chaos to amass wealth die. Those who take advantage of the chaos to rob, die. Those who do not listen to orders die. Those who are slow to obey orders die. Those who do not help others in need die. Under Emotianji's strict orders, after the chaos in Tianlan City, the order actually reached the standards of the world. There were treasures in any of the ruined places. They were either gold and silver, or purple and white crystals, sparkling brightly. But absolutely no one dared to pick them up and put them in their arms. They were all quietly piled up in a certain place, and were used in a unified manner. Some people cried, "This is my family's. You must give it to me." Then in the next moment, a steel knife chopped down and a head fell to the ground. Lord Emo said, "Your life is not yours. In this world, there is nothing that belongs to you. I only value the rebuilt mother city," Emotianji said. In the rebuilding process, I only have one rule: kill. Or not the closest to human nature. But at a time like this, it is the most effective method. In a certain area, if someone froze to death, the person in charge of distributing the resources was dead. If someone starved to death, the person in charge of cooking would also die. In just a few days, the face of Tianlan City had changed drastically. I can let you live in heaven, as long as you are obedient. I can also send you to hell immediately, as long as you don't listen to me. Mo Tianji's almost monstrous planning ability, his almost cold-blooded methods of control, and his almost mythical calculations were all in this accident. The performance was incisive and vivid. All of the remaining treasures were piled up in the square. They were not covered by anything, and were just stored in the open. Amethyst, white crystal, gold, silver. Everything was piled up like a mountain. Every night, there would be people stealing. Every night, countless people would be killed. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to lure out all the greedy people in this city and kill them. Mo Tianji said indifferently. Since this is the city, 400 to 500,000 people have already died because of me. Then, I don't mind doubling this number. I only want to create a paradise. Anyone who destroys it is unforgivable. Following his indifferent orders, rules were quickly implemented one by one. Everyone, who had yet to recover from the previous shock, naturally accepted the reality that Tianlan City had changed hands. Countless armored horses galloped out like a gust of wind. They carried Mo Tianji's letter to recruit all the affiliated clans in the Long clan. Mo Tianji's time limit: 5 days. If any messenger did not return in 5 days, the clan he was in charge of delivering the letter to would be annihilated. Before leaving, they had to pay for the medicine. If they did not return in time, the messenger would die from the poison. The entire clan would be slaughtered. 5 days later, Ao Xian, Xiedanxiong, Gu Duxing, GMO and Luo Kadi attacked repeatedly. One by one, the affiliated clans of the Long clan were slaughtered and blood flowed for thousands of miles. Faced with such a phenomenon, Ao Xian had once tactfully mentioned to Mo Tianji, killing too much is against the harmony of the heavens. Mo Tianji's reply was, if we don't kill when we should, it won't just be against the harmony of the heavens. Even if they are obedient now, I still have to observe for a period of time, let alone reject them directly. If they don't obey my orders now, even if they obey against their will, something will definitely happen in the future. They might as well turn into corpses now in this chaotic world. Mo Tianji said something when he was patrolling the city. This sentence was regarded as a treasure by countless lords for countless years to come. Even if I kill until only one person is left in this city, I want this city to operate according to my wishes. Otherwise, even if there are tens of millions of people in this city, if they don't obey my orders, it's equivalent to having none. If that's the case, there's no harm in slaughtering them. In such a chaotic place, only such a cruel and high-pressure method was the most effective. I like people who are obedient. If you are not an obedient person to begin with, I also hope that you will pretend to be obedient in my territory. Otherwise, you will die. Those who are obedient will not be rewarded. However, if anyone is disobedient and acts secretly, after being reported, this person's entire family will be slaughtered. The informant can have all of this person's property as his personal property. As the strict rules were passed down Tianlan City, no, from now on, it was called Mother City. Mother City was killing people every day. In the last few days, the number of killings decreased, and the order in the city became better and better. This city is a fair world, Mo Tianji said. After it is built, everyone's house is the same. They were all the same. Everyone's wealth was the same. There are no poor, no rich, no merchants, no nothing at all. Whatever you want to do in the future, think of your own ways to earn more money. Think of your own ways. I don't care what methods you use, but don't give me a reason to kill. You make your own rules, I don't care. But, if I think that you are wrong, then you will die. An unreasonable way of management. A cruel way of governing. Here, it was the most efficient way. Chu Yang was a little surprised. From his point of view, Mo Tianji wanted to rule this city completely. It would take at least a year to completely change the appearance of the old buildings in such ruins. It might not even be enough. But now, under Mo Tianji's enforcement, it only took a month. Regardless of whether it was martial artists or civilians, they were all obedient. After killing so many people, no one complained or mentioned Lord Mo. There were actually such comments. Although Lord Mo likes to kill a little too much, he is still quite a good person. Quite a good person. Not to mention Chu Yang. When the other brothers heard such comments, they were all shocked. Aren't you afraid that this will drive everyone away? Chu Yang once asked. It's hard to leave one's homeland. Faced with Chu Yang's inquiry, Mo Tianji only answered in a low voice. For people, the land that gave birth to them and raised them. It is their roots. Most people, no matter if they are loyal or cunning, would rather die than leave this piece of land that is better than their own. Of course, there are prerequisites. As long as they don't break out of this place after they are in their 20s, that will be the case. And this place is very fair. As long as they don't break the law, as long as they are not bullied, nothing will happen. There are still people who stand up for them. Such a world, in the heavenly layer, is also unique. Mo Tianji said lightly. Also these days, I only killed people and did not make any specific living laws. But there are already people who are making laws based on every person I kill. Also, I inadvertently took a look and it is almost perfect. There are a total of 180 death sentences. Mo Tianji smiled slightly. I am very satisfied. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. This works? But he had to admit that this was really feasible. Moreover, the people spontaneously made laws were far better than the rulers making them. Although in fact, they found the laws from every person Mo Tianji killed. In the hearts of the people, such laws were indeed made by themselves. Everyone had a common understanding. How can I not abide by the laws I made myself? Now less than half of the people had already moved into their new homes. There were tens of thousands of people who could move into their own homes tomorrow afternoon. Then, half of the people were still living in tents. But there was not much time left. With the completion of one house after another, everyone would be able to move into their new homes in half a month at most. Moreover, they would receive an equal amount of property from Lord Mo, as well as food that could last them for a few months. In a few months, all kinds of shops would be opened, all kinds of businesses would be done, and all kinds of transactions would be circulated. Such a city was a huge opportunity for everyone. Everyone was at the same starting line. If you want to live better than others, you can, as long as you use your brain and work hard. In the future, once it is stable, I will set up a school here and set up all kinds of formal city management organizations in the open space left behind. Mo Tianji's eyes shone. The cruelty now will let people who come to this city feel the warmth and safety of a mother's embrace in the future. Chu Yang was deep in thought. Mo Tianji turned his head and looked at the night sky outside the window. He said softly, Chu Yang, thank you for letting me be so willful here for once. Chu Yang shook his head and laughed. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. We have plenty of time. Mo Tianji looked out of the window quietly and said, No, our time is very short, and our opportunities are also very few. This place is almost done, so the next step of the operation must be carried out immediately. We need to leave this place immediately. Only when we leave and let go will this city be preserved. If we wait for the other parties to react, then this place will be attacked by a group. Chapter 1368. Chu Yang nodded and leaned against the chair lazily. However, I need to remind you, it's been almost a month since the Lan clan was destroyed. Even if the clans didn't receive the news in the first few days, they must have known by now. Mo Tianji nodded. I've already thought of this. From the third day onwards, I've been preparing to guard against the nearest Zhuge clan. From the 10th day onwards, I've been preparing to guard against the other clans. However, they may have already taken action, but they didn't have any particularly obvious reaction. Mo Tianji smiled and said, Since they didn't have any obvious reaction, I'll just make a bigger fuss here. Chu Yang pondered and said, Tianji, you've been rebuilding Mother City until now. It can be said that it's starting to take shape. However, Have you ever thought that if we leave and the other clans come knocking on our door, it'll be a catastrophe? Perhaps the city that you've just built and spent so much effort on might turn into ruins in an instant. That's why we have to leave. Emotianji smiled confidently, because the timing is really too good. Too good. Chu Yang frowned and didn't quite understand. Emotianji laughed. Come with me. As he said, he pulled Chu Yang into a tent. Chu Yang went in and saw that the ground in the tent was actually a simulation map. This is the information that I've been collecting during this period of time. I bought the map from the law enforcement officers and created the distribution map of the forces in the upper three heavens. Emotianji pasted a large piece of white paper on the wall. Then he grabbed a brush. According to the topography of the ground, he quickly drew a few dots on the paper. Putting the law enforcement officers aside, this is the distribution of the clans. We're here for now. Emotianji picked up the brush and drew a circle at the bottom. Next to us is the Zhuge clan. For now, all the clans are gathering towards the northwest. He drew a few arrows with the brush. The heavenly passage will open at this moment. And after the passage opens, the Lan clan will be destroyed. Emotianji drew a few vague figures with the brush. He made the arrows clearer, and then looked at Chu Yang with a smile. What have you thought of? Chu Yang admitted that he was extremely smart. But at this moment, however, he was somewhat unsure. The major clans are all working hard to exterminate the Li clan. And at this time, we wiped out the Long clan in one fell swoop. Mo Tianji said. The opening of the heavens was also the work of the Tribulation Sword Master. The Long clan was destroyed. They didn't know that Tan Tan had already left. They could only think that it was our own power. That would give people the illusion that the Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulation are already very powerful. This is one of them. Secondly, Tribulation must be behind the destruction of the Lan family. Thirdly, why did Tribulation do that? Moreover, they were in such a hurry to wipe out the Lan clan? After all, the Lan clan had met with misfortune within a few days after the passageway was opened. Why is that? It's impossible for the Lan clan to offend Tribulation so badly. Therefore, there must be people here who doubt the reason why Tribulation is so impatient. Was it related to the Li family's predicament? Attack the enemy's only way out of the predicament of the Li clan? At this point, Mo Tianji drew a question mark on the white paper. Chu Yang suddenly understood. However, he still had some doubts in his heart. So he quietly listened to Mo Tianji. There must be people who have thought of this. We don't need too many of them. As long as there's one of them, it'll be enough to make waves in the allied forces of the 8 super clans. Then by extension, how important is the Li clan to Tribulation? Mo Tianji smiled and said, once this idea is born, and Tribulation's strength is actually enough to wipe out the entire Lan clan. Then, if you're a member of the 8 super clans, would you choose to wipe out the Li clan first, or go head-on against Tribulation? Chu Yang said without hesitation. Of course, I'd take advantage of the fact that Tribulation hasn't gathered to wipe out the Li clan first. It's better to break one than to injure all 10 fingers. That's right. Mo Tianji clapped and smiled. Therefore, the Northwest must be very lively now. As for me, after taking down the Lan clan, I immediately rebuilt the city. Although this wasn't my original intention, it gave people the illusion that Tribulation wanted to build a base in the Lan clan's territory to fight against the 8 super clans. Therefore, for now they won't touch us. Chu Yang nodded. When we think that the base is already very strong, that's the moment when they tie us up here? That's right. Mo Tianji nodded. At that time, they'll gather and attack us as a group. They'll destroy the base together with us. But, at that time, it must be after they've wiped out the Li clan. For 100,000 years, the rumor hasn't changed. That's Tribulation as one is invincible in the world. Therefore, before they get rid of Li Xiong too, they don't have the confidence to wipe us out. If Li Xiong too joins us, they won't be able to eat or sleep well. Mo Tianji's face revealed a cynical smile. Chu Yang also laughed heartily. Because Li Xiong too, whom the law enforcement officers and the super clans had identified as one of the Tribulations, wasn't a Tribulation at all. Chu Yang suddenly felt a little apprehensive. It was only now that he realized how terrifying Mo Tianji's arrangement of Li Xiongtu as a backup plan was. As it progressed step by step, the importance and terror of this backup plan became more and more obvious. As if he could tell what Chu Yang was thinking, Mo Tianji said, "As for whether Li Xiongtu's identity would be exposed or not, I've never worried. Once such a thing is suspected, it'll only make things worse. Even if Li Xiongtu knew the truth from the start, and denied it from the start, no one would believe him. The most reassuring way would be to kill him. And as long as the Li clan has such a suspicion, they won't let anyone kill Li Xiongtu so easily. As this situation becomes more and more intense, even if the Li clan only had a bit of suspicion at the start, they've become 100% convinced now. Similarly, the other clans are the same. At the start they weren't sure, but now they're 100% sure that it's Li Xiongtu. Therefore, their fight to the death was already destined when you gave Li Xiongtu the medicine while he was unconscious. This isn't a ploy. This is human nature. Since they haven't immediately dealt with this newly rebuilt mother city, they won't be attacked with great fanfare in the short term. Therefore, they'll pay close attention to the movements here, but won't make any big moves." Mo Tianji smiled as if he had a card up his sleeve. Then he spoke with certainty. "And if we're to leave now, they won't dare to do anything to us. On the contrary, they don't dare to do anything to our foundation. First of all, if our foundation is destroyed, we will never come back. Then, who has the confidence to catch and kill tribulation who is elusive? Secondly, if we leave and they attack this city, they'll incur our endless revenge. Although all the clans want to use this method to lure us out, none of them want to be our first target. The Long clan is a good example." Mo Tianji said, "Therefore we're leaving now. It's the safest. It's also the most secretive. It's more convenient for the next step." Chu Yang nodded slowly. "However, if we want to leave, we'll need a follow-up plan. Once we're used by others, the consequences won't be good," said Chu Yang. "The medicine I asked you for the other day has already been used." Mo Tianji smiled faintly. "The strong men of the Long clan's affiliated clans have taken one. They've all taken one. I told them that they must take the antidote once a year. Otherwise, haha, if the city isn't well managed." Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "But that medicine isn't that serious." Mo Tianji mischievously smiled. "But that poison cannot be expelled within a year. Once checked, they'll be poisoned. Who dares to disobey? Human nature. In this aspect, it's better to believe it than not." Mo Tianji smiled and said, "I remember once I caught a pervert. I fed him a mud pill and told him that this medicine is called the life and death pill. He'll definitely die within a day. Then, that guy wailed and begged for mercy for a day and a night. When the day was about to end, he died. Moreover, he died as if he was poisoned. But only I knew that he wasn't poisoned at all. There wasn't even a trace of poison." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. It seemed that only Mo Tianji could do such a cruel experiment. Although the subject of the experiment was a pervert who committed all kinds of crimes, thinking about such a thing still sent chills down one's spine. "So they won't dare to disobey." Mo Tianji smiled calmly. "I'm absolutely sure about this." Chu Yang was speechless. Mo Tianji made use of human nature to deal with these matters. He was simply superb at making use of it. But this time his starting point had finally changed. It had become to protect the people living here, and not purely to make use of them. Chu Yang's heart was also rather comforted. "Next, we have to leave this place. We have to leave openly. We have to wear our daily masks, and leave through the main gate. This is equivalent to sending a message to the 8 great clans. We've left this place," Mo Tianji said. "Once we leave, we'll immediately find a hidden place to change our appearance. Then, we'll gather at the headquarters of the Zhuge clan, Tianji City." Speaking of the 3 words Tianji City, Mo Tianji's expression was a little strange. "Don't tell me you want to mess with the Zhuge clan again while you're at it?" Chu Yang was shocked. Mo Tianji smiled. "How do we have the ability to mess with the Zhuge clan again? Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. To the Zhuge clan, it's just a large-scale harassment. But we have to make them feel pressured. Let the other great clans feel the determination of tribulation. In this way, their deployment can be adjusted based on such a foundation. And what I want is their deployment after the adjustment. Because that will definitely be a mistake. As long as they make a mistake, it will definitely be beneficial to us. Chapter 1369. Mo Tianji grinned and looked at Chu Yang meaningfully. You can rest assured about this. As long as you treat my sister well, I don't mind even if you order me around like an ox or a horse. Chu Yang was furious, but also a little guilty. Bullshit. Am I that kind of person? Mo Tianji snorted and rolled his eyes. Don't forget that empress of yours from the lower three heavens. Humph. Chu Yang said angrily. I've told you about that. Mo Tianji snorted and said. Anyway, you can't make my sister sad. Chu Yang bared his teeth. Shut up. Mo Tianji laughed and turned to leave. When he reached the entrance of the tent, he suddenly turned back and tore down the messy map that had just been drawn on the wall and crushed it into powder. Only then did he go out. Chu Yang was impressed. This guy's meticulousness was obvious. He was actually afraid of leaking the secret by staying here and watching. Looking up, he thought. If Diwu Qingru knew about this, what would he do? What would he think? Everything that Mo Tianji had imagined was indeed wonderful. However, would Diwu Qingru let things go smoothly for Mo Tianji? The next day, early morning, the brothers wore their signature masks and swaggered out of Mother City. For some reason, the news that they were leaving was leaked. Along the way, people actually lined the streets to send them off. There were even some people who were reluctant to part and shed tears. This situation made GMO and Luo Kadi's jaws drop. This guy kills people like flies. He doesn't know right from wrong. Why do so many people still love him? GMO couldn't understand. That's right. This guy is the main culprit who destroyed their homes. Luo Kadi was also very confused. What do you know? Ao Shiyan scolded disdainfully. If we don't know, then why don't you tell us? GMO and Luo Kadi shouted in dissatisfaction. Did we say something wrong? You are right. Ao Shiyan snorted and said. But you don't understand this world at all. In the past, after tens of thousands of years of development, the gap between the rich and the poor in this city is already outrageous. Even people who don't have to worry about food and clothing are also lamenting the inequality. Such ordinary people. There were more than 1 million people who would think this way. If the world went back to where everyone had the same starting point, I might not be worse than others. I can be a millionaire too. Becoming a millionaire. But in the past, they had only thought about it. Now Mo Tianji had helped them realize it. Everyone has to start from scratch. You only saw the cruelty of his methods, but you didn't see the fairness he created. To the people, fairness was the most respectful and convincing thing. Moreover, he had also planned the future of the city. The people who would live here in the future would be much happier than before. He had killed many people, and many of them were definitely wronged. But so what? Their lives were at stake. Compared to the happiness of the millions of people in the city, which was more important? This is something that anyone can calculate. The slaughter now. However, it could ensure that people would not easily break the law for a long time. How great would the benefits to the people be? This was a good thing that would benefit the future generations. How can we not support him? Ao Shiyan said solemnly. Maybe that is the case, but why would those rich people support him when they were deprived of their assets? GMO asked unhappily. That's why I said you are stupid. This time, even Xie Danxiong couldn't help but say, poverty is a kind of power. When this power goes out of control, the rich people will always be the ones to suffer. If the money is still in the hands of the rich, then the riots of the poor people are inevitable. There have been many cases before. The rich people who were involved in the riots not only lost their money, but also the lives of their families. Mo Tianji took it away, which is equivalent to protecting their lives. Moreover, they were also very satisfied when they were given the same amount of money as the others. This is because they have more experience, more channels, and more connections than the average person. Therefore, they must be full of confidence in themselves. Don't you understand? Moreover, it can give them the feeling of starting over, as if they are living again. Do you understand this feeling? Xia Danxiong looked at the two of them with disdain. I don't understand. GMO and Luo Kudi shook their heads at the same time. I can't explain it to you. Xia Danxiong stared for a while. Then he sighed and turned his head. He muttered, rotten wood can't be carved. Luo Kudi suddenly chuckled. GMO, I just realized that Xia Danxiong is indeed very beautiful. Especially when he stares, his eyes are so clear and bright. No wonder he was mistaken for a rabbit. GMO nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes, yes. I was almost tempted just now. The two of them suddenly forgot what they were arguing about a moment ago. Instead, they started to comment on Xia Danxiong. Xia Danxiong was so angry that his face turned black. He shouted and started to chase after them. Chu Yang smiled on the side. GMO and Luo Kudi didn't understand, but he completely understood. This was like a person who was doing something that he had longed to do all his life. When he succeeded in doing this, he would have a feeling of the ship has arrived at the dock, and the train has arrived at the station. At this time, people would often have a feeling of having no goal in life. However, if his achievements were erased, and he was made to start all over again, of course, there would be a psychological gap in a short period of time. However, as long as he adjusted, he would have a greater joy in life. There would be a kind of joy similar to cheating. Especially when what erased their achievements was an irresistible factor. Humans were able to adapt faster than any other species. The feeling of regaining something you had lost, and then losing it made people feel grateful instead of resentment. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. This is also a kind of human nature. Little Nan Nan Yin Niancy hugged Mo Tianji's neck and refused to let him go. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Mo Tianji displayed a rare display of self-restraint as he coaxed this 3 to 4-year-old little girl for a long time. Only when the little girl's tears turned into smiles did he hand her hand over to someone he had designated. He instructed, take good care of her. If Nan Nan is a little thinner or lighter when I come back, I will break your legs. That person's face was sullen as he agreed repeatedly. He thought to himself, how can I not be attentive? You even planted poison in my body. The figures of the few people disappeared on the long road. Only then did little Nan Nan start to cry. Weak cries came from the wind. Mo Tianji's eyes were actually a little red. Chu Yang looked over and pretended to be shocked. Fuck. Tianji is crying. Immediately, GMO and Luo Kudi came over with great interest. Crying? Is he really crying? I thought this guy wouldn't cry, but he actually cried today. Mo Tianji's face was red. He roared. You are the ones crying. You are all crying. He whipped his horse and galloped away. The brothers laughed and chased after him with strange voices. They whistled and spun into the air. This was GMO's masterpiece. This guy was slow to learn, but he was a self-taught weirdo. For example, whistling. He had learned from Luo Kudi twice. Now, it was much clearer and louder than Luo Kudi's. Immediately, after turning around a mountain, the experts of the various clans who were chasing after them realized that they had lost them. These people seemed to have evaporated into thin air and disappeared without a trace. They couldn't help but sigh. Tribulation is awesome. After being here for so many days, I actually didn't find out what they looked like. I only know that one of them is surnamed Mo. As for the others, I don't even know their surnames. Just as they were about to return to their respective clans to pass on the message, a voice came from behind them. Suddenly, sword light flashed in front of them. Flowers bloomed and hidden weapons danced. It was Chu Yang and the others who had made a beautiful counterattack. The brothers were responsible for 2 to 3 people each. It was a clean battle of annihilation. After killing their opponents, they didn't stop at all. They didn't care about the other brothers. Each of them chose a direction and flew away without a trace. One day later, the territory of the Zhuge clan was like a calm pot of oil that had been ignited from the bottom. It began to boil, and then there were flames everywhere. It was said that dozens of bandits acted at the same time and attacked 30 to 40 strongholds of the Zhuge clan. Thick smoke and fire rolled into the sky. Every place that was attacked had a wall with these shocking words written in bright red blood. Withdraw your men. There was no beginning or end, just these few words. Moreover, the attackers came and went without a trace. Often when you thought that the next place to be attacked would be here, it would be there. In short, every attack was unexpected, and every time you were harassed, it would be an absolute empty spot. A clan like the Zhuge clan, which was famous for its intelligence, was also in a terrible fix after suddenly encountering such shameless tactics. Send out experts. No problem. We won't face your experts head-on at all. No one knew what methods these people used to conceal their aura, so well that not even the slightest bit was leaked. Even low-grade supreme martial artists couldn't find them. However, as long as the low-grade supreme martial artists of the Zhuge clan were alone, there was absolutely no chance of survival. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. The elder master of the Zhuge clan was furious. He issued a strict order and mobilized all the experts in the clan to investigate thoroughly. All the secret forces of the clan were mobilized. At the same time, they made use of the convenience of being familiar with the terrain to set up layers and layers of traps. Like an inescapable net, they enveloped the entire Tianji city. However, the strange thing was that from that moment on, nothing happened in Tianji city anymore. It was as if those people had left after causing trouble. In the short span of 10 days, the Zhuge clan's Tianji city was attacked more than 300 times and caught fire more than 200 times. Once it caught fire, there was absolutely nothing left in the place that was on fire. More than 100 martial saints were killed, and 5 supreme martial artists were killed. The clan's wealth was greatly reduced. The entire Zhuge clan was furious, but there was nothing they could do. The chaos of the heavens seemed to have started from here. Moreover, everyone had a premonition that this kind of chaos had started from the Long clan and had already spread to the Zhuge clan. Slowly, it was bound to be like a spark of fire that started a prairie fire until it burned the entire upper 3 heavens. Chapter 1370. The south was already in chaos. The Zhuge clan was on high alert. Zhuge Han and Zhuge dukes, one on the left and one on the right, each led their men and made their arrangements carefully. The elder master of the Zhuge clan was in charge of the clan, divining the heavenly secrets. 3 days later, he finally had some clues. By the time he sent a message to the clan, the chaos had already subsided. Apart from a few dozen more ruins, it was as if nothing had happened. The territory of the Zhuge clan regained its peace. No one knew where that bunch of troublemakers had gone. Holding the heavenly secrets divined by the elder master, the people of the Zhuge clan all felt aggrieved. What was the use of taking it out now? The killing star comes from the south. The world is turned upside down. The people are plunged into misery and suffering for the emperor's anger. The heavenly secrets are hard to predict. The shadows cannot be seen. A false alarm. The stars look north. This was the gatha of the elder master, Zhuge Zangqiong. If we had known that it was a false alarm, we wouldn't have been so jittery. But who would have thought of such a thing beforehand? However, the last sentence, the stars look north. Did it mean that these people had gone to the north? And the north was in a war now. Then, was tribulation going to rescue Li Xiong too? The Zhuge clan immediately spread the news. The northwest, the big tent of the alliance command. Frowning, Diwu Qingru sat at the head of the table. It had been a month since he came here, but now, Diwu Qingru more or less felt mentally and physically exhausted. Although he was the commander of the alliance army appointed by the Dharma Supreme, there were not many people here who really took him seriously. And precisely because the Dharma Supreme appointed him, in the eyes of these arrogant supreme martial artists, he was even more of a bootlicker. Diwu Qingru felt a difference. This was different from the lower 3 heavens. The lower 3 heavens worshipped martial power. They worshipped wisdom even more. Therefore, a scholar could become a prime minister, a grand tutor, or even a military advisor with his wisdom. As long as he could bring victory, even if he was a paralyzed person, he could still be admired by everyone. But here, there was only martial power. And there was only individual martial power. There was only individual power. This time, the alliance army of the 8 superclans was all here. Almost everyone was a supreme martial artist. Every one of them had their eyes on the top of their heads and considered everything beneath them. With such an advantage in numbers, What kind of planning was needed to deal with the Merely clan? Even if you have 1,000 brilliant plans, I will only use one punch. A supreme martial artist of the Yi clan had once said something like this when Diwu Qingro had brought up the idea of outsmarting them. Outsmarting them. Ha ha ha. Wisdom is useful, no one can deny this. But that was under the condition that both sides were on equal footing. The fifth Commander-in-Chief. With all due respect, may I ask the Commander-in-Chief, a trap can kill a sovereign, but can this trap kill a supreme? A bunch of ants. They might be able to bite a green insect to death, but could a group of ants eat a living divine dragon? Haha. The so-called wisdom is nothing more than scheming and calculating. But do you think that under such circumstances we more than 1,000 supreme martial artists would actually still need to plan and scheme against a Merely clan? Aren't you thinking too highly of them? After he finished speaking, all the supreme martial artists in the tent clapped and laughed. Diwu Qingro felt powerless. There were more than 1,000 supreme martial artists here. The teams of the various great clans. It was indeed very majestic. In order to take revenge, the law enforcement officers had even mobilized a large number of experts. And there were 3 mid-grade supreme martial artists. It was indeed enough to deal with the Li clan. But this was the combined strength. If they were to be separated, no matter which clan came, they would definitely not be a match for the Li clan. But all of them acted as if they were the best in the world. There was absolutely no possibility of sincere cooperation. The Yi clan and the Xiao clan also had some entanglements. They seemed to be ready to drag each other down at any time. And the Xiao clan and the Long clan also had grievances. The Zhuge clan had also suffered losses. The Cheng clan was even more indignant. The Shi clan was waiting for an opportunity to strike. When Diwu Qingro thought of these relationships, he felt a headache coming on. And the 2 guardians that the Dharma Supreme had sent for him were only responsible for his own safety. They were not responsible for suppressing the emotions of the various great clans. Appearing in such a chaotic environment, even if Diwu Qingro had heaven-defying wisdom, he was also temporarily at his wits' end. No one would enforce the rules and regulations that he issued. Every time there was a battle, and he wanted to hold a meeting before the battle, there would also be people who arrived, and people who did not. What could Diwu Qingro do with such a motley crew? Diwu Qingro could only swallow his anger and slowly consolidate his strength first. Moreover, it took Diwu Qingro 2 days and 2 nights just to understand the relationship between the big clans. Then he discovered that almost every big clan had relatives. But there was also hatred between each of the big clans. Diwu Qingro could only distribute according to the intensity of the hatred. For example, if the Yi clan went to the west to carry out a mission, then even if the Xiao clan did not have a mission, they would go to the east to guard and separate them. The other clans would also have to act accordingly to avoid dragging each other down. This was the first step. And then, in the few battles with the Li clan, although everyone did not listen to his command, Diwu Qingro still made a complete battle plan and assigned it to every leader. These people naturally would not follow Diwu Qingro's command, but if they did not follow the command, they would definitely suffer losses. And then after suffering losses, they would look at the battle plan at hand and understand that Diwu Qingro was right. And then, they would have a little respect and admiration for Diwu Qingro. He actually had to use such a method of first suffering losses, and then learning from it to build up his prestige. Diwu Qingro felt extremely comical. However, it was imperative to do so, and this was the only way to make them listen to him. In the past month they had fought 7 to 8 times. The Yi clan had fallen into an ambush and lost quite a number of men. The Xiao clan had more than a dozen men eaten, and they had to flee back in a sorry state. The Shi clan had been trapped once, and almost all of them were wiped out. The Chen clan had almost been burned alive. And then, these few clans were finally convinced by Diwu Qingro. All in all, for a whole month, Diwu Qingro was training his troops. And he was training a group of bandits into a proper army. He used blood and death to train his troops. Every time, the price of every troop's obedience was the lives of dozens of supreme martial artists. Such a price of training troops was the most expensive price in the history of the heavenly layer. Di Wuqing slowly changed from being powerless in the beginning to being a person with some authority. Yes, it was some authority, but this authority was related to his identity as the commander-in-chief. It was a complete mismatch. But Di Wuqing did not show the slightest bit of anxiety. He knew. It was already very good to be able to achieve such results now. Every time Di Wuqing inspected the allied troops, he always had a kind of sigh in his heart. Such a troop can go against tribulation who is so united? As long as tribulation's strength increases to a certain level, these supreme martial artists will be a bunch of pigs waiting to be slaughtered. Fortunately, the situation has changed now. At least, during the meeting, although the leaders were still a little slow, they could all be gathered in the end. This was progress. Now, in this big tent, there was a discussion going on. To the big clans, they were discussing a major matter that was like a bolt from the blue. Di Wuqing had been watching the discussion coldly. He felt, this time, it would be his chance. What? The Long clan has been destroyed. The 8th grade supreme martial artist Yi Xiaoyao, who led the Yi clan team, widened his eyes. Is the news true? Rumor. This is definitely a rumor. The 8th grade supreme martial artist Lan Mafeng, who led the Long clan team, stood up and waved his arms excitedly. Even senior Lan Buhui died an unnatural death? That's impossible, right? The Xiao clan team expert Xiao Jingyan said. Tribulation on the heavenly layer made such a big move? Bullshit. The current Tribulation Sword Master has only just obtained the first fragment of the Tribulation Sword, right? How can the current Tribulation have such ability? The Chen clan team expert Chen Jianlong was in disbelief. It's absolutely true. All the big clans have received such news. How can it be false? The Shi clan team expert Shi Qishu twirled his beard. The law enforcement officers have also received the same news. The voice of the law enforcement officer leading the team expert Yu Zhenhai was very serious. And it was issued with the signature of the Dharma Supreme. This time, it was as good as a final decision. Even the Dharma Supreme had confirmed this news. Then it was definitely not false. Lan Mafeng of the Long clan stared blankly, his face pale. Like a deflated balloon, he sat down with a thud. Di Wuqing frowned slightly, and secretly glanced at Lan Mafeng. If the Long clan was gone, then the Long clan's men here would be the last of their strength. Were they rootless duckweeds now? In the big tent, everyone was in a heated discussion, their faces full of shock and doubt. But there were also benefits to such chaos. In the end, everyone had already confirmed this news. What was left was only wariness and suspicion towards tribulation, and the Tribulation Sword Master. The latest news from the Zhuge clan. An announcement came from outside. The Zhuge clan team expert Zhuge Yinfeng hurriedly shouted, "Come in." The curtain of the big tent opened, and a person came in. Zhuge Yinfeng said, "Read it directly." That person said, "Yes." He took out a piece of paper and read. The Long clan was destroyed. Tribulation went crazy and harassed the Zhuge clan for 10 days. The Zhuge clan suffered huge losses, and many experts died. At present, tribulation has already left. The Elder Master calculated the heavenly secrets, and came up with a gatha. At this point, that person was somewhat hesitant. Read it. Other than Di Wuqing who kept silent, everyone else in the tent shouted in unison. The killing star comes from the south. The world is turned upside down. The people are plunged into misery and suffering, for the emperor's anger. The heavenly secrets are hard to predict. The shadows are hard to predict. A false alarm. The stars look north. The Elder Master hereby notifies that the Tribulation Sword Master in tribulation should have killed their way to the north. After this person finished reading, the tent fell into silence. The stars look north. In other words, the Tribulation Sword Master and his brother Tribulation were going to take part in this encirclement battle in the northwest. Everyone's eyes lit up at the same time. Chapter 1371. Seeing Lan Mafeng take a seat below Di Wuqing, all the supreme martial artists felt that the current Lan Mafeng was a little different from the Lan Mafeng just now. But they couldn't quite put their finger on it. But no one would be so naive as to think that Diwu Qingru could bribe Lan Mafeng with just a few words. They were all 8th grade supreme martial artists. How tough were their temperaments? Usually, they wouldn't even blink when a mountain collapsed in front of them. Separation of life and death was also a common occurrence. How could they be bribed with just a few words? So no one thought much about it at all. But they didn't know that something like the annihilation of a clan was a heavy blow to anyone. At this time, a warm word was enough to be remembered for a lifetime. How could it compare to sending charcoal in the snow? What was more, Diwu Qingru's words made Lan Mafeng stick out his chest again in this group, when he was feeling dejected. What Diwu Qingru gave him was dignity. Of course, this couldn't bribe Lan Mafeng. But in the days to come, Diwu Qingru would leave a trustworthy impression in his heart. And with Diwu Qingru's ability and means, as long as he was given time and opportunity, he was completely confident that he could turn this momentary gratitude into control. Diwu Qingru waited for Lan Mafeng to sit down before he smiled and said, "Everyone, this matter now can be said to be unexpected. It can also be said to be earth-shattering, and has completely disrupted our original deployment plan." Everyone nodded. This matter indeed had an earth-shattering impact. Some of them were still dizzy even now, feeling as if they were dreaming. As for the original plan, in the face of such an unexpected event, how could it still be a plan? The original plan was still under the impression that Tribulation was at most a martial saint. But now, he directly annihilated the Lan clan. This incident is very big, Diwu Qingru said lightly. Although there are strong and weak clans, since Tribulation can wipe out the Lan clan, then I believe it's not very difficult to deal with the other clans. And according to the intelligence, to deal with the Lan clan, Tribulation didn't pay a particularly heavy price. Then, to deal with other clans, even the Yi clan that ranks first, can Tribulation do it? Or he only needs to pay some price? Diwu Qingru nodded and apologized to Yi Xiaoyao. "Elder Yi, it's an example. Don't blame me." Yi Xiaoyao's face darkened as he let out a long sigh. "This is the truth. What's wrong with that?" Everyone looked worried. This was what everyone was most worried about. Diwu Qingru's words. He hit the nail on the head. It exposed everyone's deepest fears at the same time. The expression in the eyes of an old man standing behind him fluctuated slightly, but then he lowered his eyelids and remained motionless. This person. He was the only 5th grade supreme martial artist expert of the Diwu clan. At this moment, he was having a hard time holding himself back. His mind was filled with questions. Just last night, when he had just received the news, Qingru also said that Tribulation couldn't do it at all with his current strength, and there must be something fishy about it. Why did he say it so confidently and alarmist now? Tribulation is one invincible in the world. Diwu Qingru's index finger gently rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He said solemnly, "Right now one of the Tribulations, Li Xiong too, is trapped in the northwest by us. But there is still a person there. Because there is a sword master there. Such a person might not be weaker than Tribulation unification. In fact, it should be far beyond that." Everyone nodded in agreement. Yi Xiaoyao said, "This is absolutely true. If the sword master is not as strong as the original Tribulation, then this sword master is too tasteless." Xiao Jingyan said, "Yes, the sword master's strength should be the highest among Tribulation's strength. And he is also the core. So it is reasonable that his combat strength is extraordinary." Everyone agreed. Diwu Qingru's analysis. It really hit the nail on the head. The supreme martial artist expert behind Diwu Qingru lowered his head and remained motionless. But he was more and more confused. I once remembered that Qingru said that Li Xiong too was definitely not one of the Tribulations. Qingru had never changed his opinion on this. Why was he so sure of Li Xiong too's status as a Tribulation now? Wasn't he indirectly doing Tribulation a great favor by misleading them like this? This was a long-term plan. It should be disadvantageous. Why did Qingru do this? The threat is great, but they should have just rushed up to the upper 3 heavens now. They don't have any foundation here at all. But they just took action like this, and they even seemed to be in a hurry. It's kind of like they were desperate to cut off all means of retreat. Diwu Qingru analyzed slowly. According to common sense, tribulation should disperse immediately after coming up, hide their identities, train on their own, and build up their own strength. Then, when the time is right, they should give an order to rise up and take over the upper three heavens. This is the best plan. Although they have defeated the Long clan at present, this should never have happened. Diwu Qingru said. Since such a thing has happened, then there must be a reason. Then what is the reason? Everyone asked, looking serious and anxious. Diwu Qingru's analysis was absolutely reasonable. Just now everyone was so shocked that they neglected this aspect. Now they realized, yes, they were so anxious to take action. It was obviously like a rabbit biting someone when it was anxious. It was too urgent. For thousands of years, the process of tribulation unifying the world was recorded. How could they be so anxious and impatient like now? Moreover, tribulation didn't have a strong purpose this time. That is to say, when they came up, they didn't know that they were facing the Long clan. Diwu Qingru tapped the table lightly with his finger. Look at the date, the heavenly passage opened. Within 3 days, the Long clan was destroyed, but if they came up from other passages, they wouldn't be able to reach the Long clan in 3 days. That is to say, tribulation came up from the passage guarded by the Long clan. After coming up, they took action without hesitation. This shows that they couldn't wait. Since they were so anxious, it means that the big clans did something that they couldn't tolerate and couldn't wait any longer. So they were anxious. Diwu Qingru finished speaking in one breath and took a long breath. After tribulation destroyed the Long clan, he still put on a calm and composed look and built a new city in the Long clan. Why is that? The construction of a new city is complicated. How can it be completed in a short time? If they really wanted to build a base, it would be impossible without a few years of operation. But they only stayed for less than a month and left. After they left, they immediately attacked the Zhuge clan. Why is that so? Tribulation should be self-aware. That is, now that they have no foundation, we will never allow them to build a base on such a large scale. He definitely can't build it either. But they still did it. Why? After attacking the Zhuge clan, they immediately went north. The stars were looking north. This time their goal was clear. But why? Diwu Qingru kept asking why. The 3 consecutive whys were like 3 thunderbolts that struck everyone's heads. Yes, why is that so? Could it be the situation in the northwest? Yi Xiaoyao reacted the fastest. Could it be that the Long clan, just by chance, became a test subject? Or a scapegoat? Lan Mofeng took a deep breath. Should be. Diwu Qingru gave Yi Xiaoyao and Lan Mofeng each a smile of approval. He said, let me explain. They attacked the Long clan blindly, without any regard for the consequences, because they wanted to reduce the pressure on this side. But it was this kind of panicked action that unintentionally helped us completely confirm that Li Xiongtu was one of tribulation. They caused such a big commotion only because they wanted to save their own brother. They first created a big change to make us panic. This is equivalent to openly challenging us. Then they built a new city to give us a target and lure us to go and destroy them. This is luring the snake out of its hole and luring the tiger away from the mountain. And their subsequent moves will definitely be endless. Therefore, I dare to guarantee that if we really sent people over at that time, the Li clan's crisis would be resolved very soon if they launched their subsequent moves under the circumstances where the situation in the continent would affect the situation as a whole. And the people who went over would not even discover tribulation's shadow, except for gaining a ruined city. In this way, one in the south and one in the north would be free at the same time. Tribulation would be like a dragon returning to the sea and entering the deep mountains, disappearing without a trace. Everyone gasped at the same time. If such a situation really happened, it would really be a complete loss with nothing to show for it. There was sincere respect on Diwu Qingru's face. It's all thanks to the elder masters of the super clans who saw through tribulation's plan and did not make a move. This made tribulation's first plan fail. Here, Qingru expresses my admiration to the elder masters. Diwu Qingru said sincerely, amazing. All the supreme martial artists who led the team breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. There was pride in their eyes. Tribulation's first plan did not work, so he came up with another plan, which is to attack the Zhuge clan again regardless of the consequences. He wants to use this method to attract the attention of the super clans again. But take note, there's something very important here. Very important. Diwu Qingrou's tone was heavy, and even somewhat sinister. Everyone was shocked at the same time and held their breaths. At this point, Diwu Qingru completely controlled the atmosphere. At this point, it could already be said that Diwu Qingru completely controlled the initiative. If he said that he wanted this group of supreme martial artists to breathe, they would breathe. If he said that this group of supreme martial artists was not allowed to breathe, then everyone could only keep holding their breaths. It looked like it was caused by the topic and controlled everyone's emotions with the serious situation. But in fact, it was Diwu Qingrou's leadership authority that was further established by the people's hearts. The most important thing was that as long as it was acknowledged, then the next step would be easy. Chapter 1372. Diwu Qingrou's serious tone suppressed everyone's emotions to the extreme. A very important place? What place? Yi Xiaorao racked his brains. How is it important? Is it enough to affect the battle situation? Xiao Jingyin gasped. I didn't realize it. Up to this point, although it didn't succeed, it has been under the control of tribulation. Chen Jianlong closed his eyes and raised his head to ponder. Everyone else was also racking their brains. After thinking for a while, they still couldn't figure it out. Finally, they gave up and asked, Commander-in-Chief Diwu, what is so important? That is, tribulation attacked the Long clan and has been seriously injured. This is the most important point. Diwu Qingrou's words made everyone a little puzzled. Tribulation was seriously injured? Was there any sign in the intelligence that tribulation was seriously injured? Without waiting for everyone's questioning gaze, he quickly continued. The Zhuge clan and the Long clan are similar in strength. If they can attack the Long clan, they can definitely take down the Zhuge clan too. If you are tribulation, let me ask you, is the deterrent of destroying a clan? Or is it the deterrent of destroying two clans in a row? Would you let go of such an opportunity? Everyone couldn't help but nod. This sentence was right. But the fact is, although the Zhuge clan has lost a lot of property, the main body is still intact. Why? They are a group of butchers. It's impossible for them to kill the entire Long clan and be so merciful to the Zhuge clan, right? The only explanation is, after they attacked the Long clan, they paid a very heavy price. It was so heavy that they almost couldn't bear it. Diwu Qingrou's eyes emitted a cold light, and he slammed the table heavily. Bang! Everyone was shocked by this slap on the table. They couldn't help but shudder at the same time. All the supreme martial artists were happy to surrender at this moment. Diwu Qingrou's analysis was as if they had seen it with their own eyes. It was reasonable. To agree with any change, this was really a godlike analysis. At least the few of us couldn't do it. From this point, we can conclude that with tribulation's current strength, if he goes crazy, he can destroy a clan, but he is far from being as powerful as we think. This is the first point. Everyone must remember this conclusion. Diwu Qingru said slowly. Everyone digest this conclusion first. Then I'll come to the second conclusion. Everyone let out a sigh of relief, and for a moment their expressions relaxed. Yes, we have indeed overestimated the strength of the enemy and the severity of the situation. That's right. They were not scary. In addition, there is another possibility. That is, tribulation might have external help in destroying the Lan family this time. As for what the external help is, we don't know. At the moment, this is only a conjecture. It's good that everyone knows. Everyone was convinced. He nodded repeatedly. Who said that wisdom was useless? This was the use of wisdom. Even if you were invincible in martial arts, you might not be able to analyze this kind of analysis. Diwu Qingru was silent for a while. Then he said, the next part involves the situation in the northwest. The Li clan was already on the verge of collapse. But tribulation's impatience also tells us the importance of the Li family. They would rather pay such a heavy price to do this. We have already talked about this before. Let me add a conclusion here. That is, Li Xiong too is a relatively important part of tribulation. Everyone's spirit was shaken, and their eyes were shining. And the Li family? If our estimation is right then, the Li family must be tribulation's real base, in the upper three heavens. In other words, our encirclement this time. We hit them where it hurts the most. Diwu Qingro tapped on the table with his fingers, and then he fell into deep thought. He slowed down the speed of his speech. So this battle will follow, haha. Diwu Qingro laughed softly and said, if I say that it concerns the life and death of your clans, will you think that I am exaggerating? Everyone shook their heads vigorously. What a joke, who dared to deny it? Tribulation had gone crazy. Tribulation, with one less person, had wiped out the Lan family. If there was a mistake here, and Li Xiong too was also let go, then it would really be the end of the big clans. Everyone had a feeling in their hearts. In the future, we can't be careless anymore. We must strictly follow the orders of Commander-in-Chief Diwu. At present, the Northwest is already heavily guarded, but tribulation still comes. And they don't have their own strength. Diwu Qingro's voice was deep. At present, with our strength, even if tribulation comes, he definitely has no ability to fight us head-on. Everyone nodded. So after they come, what they are going to do should be. Diwu Qingro's eyes shot out a sharp light. Behead. Behead. Everyone shuddered in fear. Yes, under such circumstances, tribulation could only use this tactic. If the supreme martial artists of the 8 big clans were besieged and beheaded, and 1 or 2 or even more died, then it would inevitably cause chaos. As long as there was chaos, Tribulation Sword Master, and the others would have an opportunity. To put it bluntly, please don't be offended. Diwu Qingro smiled faintly. If the relationship between us is still as chaotic as it was in the past month, and everyone acts on their own, and doesn't listen to orders, they don't even need to behead the leaders, and they can let Li Xiong too escape. Yi Xiaoyao, Xiao Jingyan and the others instantly blushed. Their thousands of years old faces suddenly turned into monkey buttocks. At this moment, with such a crucial sentence, Diwu Qingro finally and completely established his absolute leadership position in the coalition forces. From this sentence, Diwu Qingro believed that every word he said would be taken seriously. This was the result of his 1 month's planning. In terms of beheading, tribulation comes and goes without a trace, and it's impossible to guard against it. And the person they should kill the most should be. Shirchishu thought for a while, and his face turned pale. He suddenly looked up at Diwu Qingro. Commander-in-Chief Diwu? Yi Xiaoyao's face changed. Yes, as long as they kill Commander-in-Chief Diwu, there's no need to sow discord, and we'll fall back into the situation where we fight for ourselves again. With this reminder, everyone thought of it. Xiao Jingyan said. In this case, the guards of Commander-in-Chief Diwu must be strengthened. Yes, that's right. After a discussion, each big clan spontaneously handed over a team of elites to be responsible for Diwu Qingro's safety. The thing that Diwu Qingro wanted to do the most, the power that he wanted to get the most, actually happened under such circumstances. He didn't even say a word about this matter at all, and it was just a matter of course. Diwu Qingro didn't pretend to be pretentious, but thanked everyone graciously. He turned to Lan Mofeng and said, Senior Lan, you have to pay special attention. If the other party takes action, you will be the first target. And your side also has the greatest possibility of chaos. He stopped abruptly in the middle of his words. But everyone understood what he meant. Lan Mofeng said gratefully, Commander-in-Chief, don't worry. These old bones of mine can still play with them for a while. Diwu Qingro frowned. He said gently, Elder Lan, please change your station with the Shi clan, and come to my side. How about you protect my safety? There was gratitude in Lan Mofeng's eyes. Diwu Qingro was safe now, and he didn't have to worry about anything at all. But such a change would put the remaining power of the Lan clan in the safest position. But he also said protect me. This was also greatly taking Lan Mofeng's face into consideration. In such a decision, the other clans, including the Shi clan that was changed, couldn't say anything. They could only agree. Now the Lan clan was placed outside. It was indeed the most dangerous time bomb. Who knew how much chaos it would cause after it was detonated? Only by putting it next to Diwu Qingro, the most resourceful person, would it be the safest. After the analysis of the situation was completed, Diwu Qingro also truly became the most powerful person in the alliance. The following arrangements. Diwu Qingro's expression didn't change at all from before. He was still modest, steady, and open-minded, but after everyone heard this, they changed from their previous relaxed attitude. One by one, they straightened their backs, widened their eyes, and pricked up their ears. The battle against the Li clan. It must be done quickly. Capture and kill Li Xiongtu as soon as possible to eliminate future troubles. Diwu Qingro said slowly. If this can be done before the tribulation arrives, it will be best. If it can't be done, by then, all the more you need to be careful. Diwu Qingro finished. In the big tent, everyone didn't leave for a long time. Only after a long time did they walk out with solemn and worried faces. In Diwu Qingro's personal tent. Qingru, are you really going to? The Diwu clan expert sent a telepathic message carefully. A mysterious smile appeared on Diwu Qingro's face. He sent a telepathic message and said, "The longer the battle against the Li clan drags on, the better. The longer it drags on, the more stable my position will be. The power of the Diwu clan will be formed after this siege. The power of the clan will be formed." The supreme martial artist Diwu Chong trembled all over. Since the decline of the Diwu clan 10,000 years ago, the matter of the formation of power had become an eternal pain. They were attached to the Zhuge clan. Once they had a little bit of power, they would be immediately divided, absorbed, or sacrificed by the Zhuge clan. And the Diwu clan could only endure and endure. Diwu Qingro actually had such confidence today? Diwu Qingro raised his head and sighed softly. It's already impossible to become a tribulation, but we have to use the tribulation's pressure on the big clans, bit by bit, to establish our power bit by bit, and then get out of the Zhuge clan's range. To become a new force. This siege in the northwest is a sign of tribulation's outstanding talent. But, isn't it also a new one for the Diwu clan? Diwu Qingro smiled slightly. The luck of the big clans has been ruined, but we have the blood luck of the last dynasty change in the lower three heavens. This is our opportunity. Racking my brains. NG. Chapter 1373. On the second day, Diwu Qingru immediately adjusted the strategic deployment. All the members of the allied forces began to head toward the Li clan's base. He also gave a death order. Wipe out all obstacles along the way. This order clearly showed the determination of not giving up until the Li clan was eradicated. All the members of the allied forces were invigorated. Diwu Qingru said something that made everyone extremely excited. This time, our base camp will be stationed 1,500 kilometers away from here. 1,500 kilometers away. That was basically the core area of the Li clan. What was the difference between this and destroying the Li clan? At his command, 2,000 to 3,000 people set up camp and charged in majestically. The Li clan was in an extremely bad shape right now. Building the clan and cleaning up the ruins had wasted too much time. Moreover, the spirit of the Li clan also seemed to have disappeared along with the collapse of the clan. Everyone was somewhat lifeless, filled with sorrow and despair. During this period of time, they had been encircling and suppressing Lang Yilong and the others. But as they encircled and suppressed them, the other party had all disappeared, as if they had collectively melted. That area had already been turned over by the Li clan for tens of thousands of feet, but they still couldn't find any trace of them. All in all, this matter had happened in such a strange and incomprehensible way. The Li clan was furious, but there was nothing they could do. The people at the periphery obviously didn't discover anything and swore that the enemy was definitely still in the northwest area. They definitely hadn't escaped. Alright then, they continued to search. But then people from the various clans came. So be it. It wasn't like they hadn't come before. They were just here to harass and test the waters. That was all. Now that the Li clan was in troubled times, they couldn't let them come in and cause trouble. Thus they sealed off the area. But with this seal, something big suddenly happened. The Li clan clearly didn't issue any orders against the few clans outside. But there were inexplicable casualties in the few clans. And those who died were all important figures. Furthermore, the spearhead was clearly pointed at the Li clan. The Li clan was extremely wronged. At such a sensitive time, we couldn't wait to avoid you. Why would we do something like digging our own graves? However, before he could explain, a blood-red warning line appeared. With this, the few clans outside went berserk and began to charge in, seeking an explanation. When they saw the Li clan, they didn't care whether they could explain. It was a frenzied killing spree. The Li clan was forced to retaliate, but this retaliation only made the situation worse. The situation was getting worse and worse. Then, the Li clan was forced to retract their defensive line by several hundred miles. After a few days of rest, do your best to search for Chu Yang and the others. And then, the Li clan realized that the sky was falling, and the earth was caving in. The various great clans had actually sent out secret troops, all of them supreme beings. They drove over in a grandiose manner, and after they drove over, they started the war without stopping. Then, the law enforcement officers also came. The Li family finally realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. The moment the few people from the law enforcement interrogation hall showed up, the Li clan knew that it was over. Motherfucker, he was still searching for her in his own house, but it turned out that she had already left. Moreover, he had even called for reinforcements. An encirclement and suppression was launched. Because of this matter, the clan leader of the Li clan, Li Wubua, flew into a rage. He scolded the few supreme martial artists who were in charge of the pursuit, regardless of their seniority. Are you all pigs? He had left long ago, but you guys are still here. This is really infuriating. Although he was infuriated, the situation of life and death that the clan was facing was extremely urgent. With more than 1,000 supreme martial artists outside, the Li clan was already in a precarious situation. Explaining would be of no help at all. After Xiao Zhenyan of the Xiao clan arrived, he did raise a condition, but this condition was unacceptable to everyone in the Li clan. Hand over Li Xiongtu, and all the martial emperors and above in the Li clan will cripple their own cultivation, and we can let the Li clan off. Upon hearing this condition, the Li clan members, they had already cursed Xiao Zhenyan and his ancestors. This was still considered letting them off? If they really did that, the Li clan would be completely done for. There was no need to consider at all. Becoming a ghost under the knife. Following the arrival of the commander of the allied forces, the Li clan's situation was getting more and more difficult. The external forces were being nibbled away bit by bit. The Li clan finally learned from this painful experience, no longer tolerating it, and started to retaliate. Relying on their familiarity with the terrain, they started a series of battles with the other great clans. All along, the other party had been attacking with a motley crew, which actually allowed the Li clan to attack and defend, and they even gained quite a bit of advantage. However, the Li clan's losses were equally great. Dozens of martial saints were lost, and 4 to 5 supreme martial artists were also reduced. Most of the external subsidiary clans had completely fallen. But after all, the situation had been stabilized for the time being. Li Wubua knew that this was just the beginning. The bigger picture would only appear after this. Therefore, during this period of time, the Li clan was fully prepared for war, and they were on high alert. Seeing the Li clan preparing for war in full swing, everyone's expression was heavy, and their footsteps were hurried. As a battle-hungry member of the Li clan, Li Xiongtu naturally wanted to participate. However, everyone stopped him from participating in the battle. As long as they saw him walking out, the 4 supreme martial artists at the door would drag him back, refusing to let him go out no matter what. What kind of joke was this? The 8 super clans were here for you. As long as you went out, you would definitely be torn into pieces in an instant. In that case, all the sacrifices and perseverance of the Li clan would become meaningless. Li Xiongtu was extremely depressed. Warriors were born to fight. How could they be called warriors if they couldn't fight? How could they improve their strength? Just as he was feeling depressed, 2 people came to visit him one after another that night. 2 important figures to the Li clan. The first to come was Li Wubua, the clan leader of the Li clan. Xiongtu, What level is your cultivation at now? Li Wubua didn't come alone. There were 5 of them. Among them were the Grand Duke of the Li clan, Li Ju, and the second Duke Li Batian, who had brought Li Xiongtu into the upper 3 heavens. There were also 3 core supreme martial artist experts accompanying them. At present, I have barely broken through to first-grade supreme martial artist. Li Xiongtu took a breath and said respectfully, also, the hidden illness in my body has disappeared. A hint of admiration appeared in Li Wubua's eyes. As expected of one of the tribulations, this future of his was really admirable. In that case, you will be able to continue walking on the path to the peak of martial arts. Li Xiongtu said cautiously, if there are no accidents. I think so. Li Wubua finally smiled in contentment. Xiongtu, I've received news. Ever since the Li clan was besieged, our reinforcements have finally appeared. A hint of excitement appeared in Li Wubua's sinister eyes. He looked into Li Xiongtu's eyes and said, the Long clan of the 8 super clans was completely uprooted a month ago. Everyone in the Long clan was killed. The elder master of the Long clan, Lan Buhui. He also died an unnatural death in this battle. Huh? Li Xiongtu was shocked. Do you know who did it? Li Wubua said. You should be able to guess. Li Xiongtu frowned and pondered. A month ago. Coincidentally, it was the day when the heavenly passageway opened, right? Could it be that the Long clan was besieged by the Tribulation Sword Master? It wasn't surprising that Li Xiongtu could come up with such a conjecture. In the upper 3 heavens, the super clans didn't have any enemies at all. If they did, there was only one, and that was the Tribulation Sword Master, who had only appeared in recent years. And a month ago was the day when the heavenly passageway opened. It was reasonable for Li Xiongtu to come up with such a conjecture. Even if it wasn't Li Xiongtu, anyone else could only come up with such a conjecture. Even an idiot would be able to figure it out. However, when these words came out of Li Xiongtu's mouth and out of other people's mouths, it gave Li Wubua and the Li clan members present a completely different feeling. A mysterious and gratified smile appeared on Li Wubua's face. He nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. So you do know. The expressions of the others, such as Li Ju and Li Batian, also became ambiguous at the same time. So you do know. And so you guessed it were completely different. So you guessed it was a coincidence, but so you do know was a certainty. Li Xiongtu must have known long ago. The pitiful Li Xiongtu was just a battle maniac. How could he have so many thoughts? He didn't think much about this at all. Xiongtu. Li Wubua's expression became more and more amiable. In your opinion, what will be the final outcome of the 8 super clans and the law enforcement officers besieging the Li clan this time? Li Xiongtu's expression was somewhat impassioned. He said angrily, the 8 super clans have gone against the grain. They will pay the price. Li Wubua's face actually flushed red with agitation because of this sentence. Because he heard it. It definitely wasn't just Li Xiongtu's words out of anger. It was the promise of tribulation and the Tribulation Sword Master. At this moment Li Xiongtu, he could totally speak on behalf of tribulation. What he said now must be the decision of the Tribulation Sword Master and his brothers. Without a doubt, the 8 super clans would pay the price. And the first price had already been paid, the Long clan. For a moment, the Li clan leader was even a little smug. How is it? Going against us? Going against tribulation? Haven't you heard that the Tribulation Sword Master is invincible? Then Xiongtu, guess why the Tribulation Sword Master attacked the Long clan? Li Wubua sighed happily. This I really can't guess. Li Xiongtu hesitated for a moment. Well, it's okay, Li Wubua smiled. Then guess. Will the Tribulation Sword Master be interested in the encirclement in the northwest and come to interfere? Li Xiongtu said with uncertainty. Since they have dealt with the Long clan, they have become enemies with the 8 super clans. And the northwest is where the battle is at now. If there are no accidents, the Tribulation Sword Master will definitely come. It was obvious that he was a louse on a bald head. However, Li Wubua clapped his hands fiercely. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted. Good. The Tribulation Sword Master will definitely come. That's great. Then the Li clan will defend with all our might. All the way until the Lord Tribulation Sword Master arrives. Everyone agreed in unison. Only Li Xiongtu's boorish heart was a little puzzled. Why did the clan leader call him Lord Tribulation Swordmaster? Lord, was there a need to be so respectful? And even if the Tribulation Swordmaster came, he might not help the Li clan. What are you all so excited about? Something big happened last night. It's not convenient for me to talk about it in detail. I can only say one thing. Women are scary. Women are not to be trifled with. I almost lost my life. And the impact of this incident is still ongoing today. I'm too fucking tragic. I wanted to cry but had no tears. Chapter 1374. Li Wubo was very happy. He was so happy that he had a long talk with Li Xiongtu. He talked about the world's situation, gave pointers to the world's heroes and commented on them. Finally, he said something disheartening. Xiongtu, Li Ju, Batian, the three of you must remember my words. What words? What if? I'm saying what if. Of course, before that, we will try our best to fight for the best result. But if the Li clan can't hold on before the Tribulation Sword Master comes, then, the three of you, take your women and support each other. Don't care about anything else. Run for your lives as soon as possible. Li Wubo's hawk-like sinister eyes revealed a hint of fear. He was silent for a long time before he said, if the Li clan is really finished, all of you need to preserve the Li clan's descendants. When that time comes, all of you must remember that your escape is not the escape of cowards, but the responsibility of the bravest. The three of them looked at Li Wubo in a daze. They didn't expect the clan leader to say something like this at a time like this. When that time comes, all of us won't blame you. Moreover, all of us will do our best to cover your escape, Li Wubo said gloomily. Of course, I'm only saying what if. The three of them were dumbfounded. Li Wubo, who had always been cold and ruthless, actually said something like this. Even his own sons, Li Ju and Li Batian, were somewhat stunned and couldn't accept it. Of course, those what-ifs may not necessarily happen. Li Wubo smiled comfortingly and stood up. Then he walked out. Li Ju, Li Batian, and Li Xiongtu exchanged complicated glances and followed Li Wubo out. Only Li Xiongtu was left. Li Xiongtu's heart was in turmoil. The clan had actually made such a choice. If there was a final juncture, to cover his escape with all their might. Li Xiongtu came to the upper three heavens like a stray dog, but received such an honor. What did I do to deserve it? Was I worthy of such treatment? After sending Li Ju and Li Batian away, Li Wubo and the three supreme martial artists walked on the spacious road. The night was foggy and the winter chill was chilly. Have the families of the various affiliated clans been arranged? Li Wubo asked after a long while. Yes. Everything has been arranged properly. An elder said. They've all gathered around the one-line heavens. It's easy to defend and hard to attack. It's absolutely safe. That's not what I'm asking. Li Wubo shook his head gently. What if the family really can't hold on until the turn of events? Then, our Li clan will have to sacrifice all our lives for the future. With the most heroic sacrifice, we will win the glorious future of our descendants. Li Wubo said solemnly. All of you must be prepared for this. It's not like we can't abandon our lives. Yes. Heroic expressions flashed across the faces of the three elders. The elder master is very disappointed in us now. Moreover, he has already developed a mentality of despair. In his opinion, the end of the Li family is near. They had arrived. And it's irreversible. Li Wubo let out a bitter laugh and said, the elder master single-handedly established the clan. Yet when it came to my generation, it was destroyed in my hands. The three supreme being elders were speechless. At the same time he sighed. Don't worry about it, family head. Victory and defeat are decided by the heavens. We can only do our best. Doing our best won't do. Li Wubo said dispassionately. Even though the destruction of the Li clan is already inevitable, I still want to preserve the future of the Li clan. And this will require the efforts of the big affiliated clans. The efforts of the big affiliated clans? The three supreme elders thought of something at the same time. Cold sweat suddenly broke out on their backs. Yes, the big affiliated clans, the participants of the battle, and all their family members. They have already split up, right? Li Wubo asked calmly. They have already split up. Are there enough family members for 100,000 people? Li Wubo was obviously more concerned about this issue. Including the guards and so on. All the family members should be around 200,000 people. At present, they are all under our protection. Under our protection? A cruel smile appeared in Li Wubo's eyes. He nodded and said, yes, that's good. At the critical moment, the experts of the affiliated clans, who should be sacrificed, must be sacrificed first. At present, there have already been quite a number of betrayals from the affiliated clans. These people are unreliable, Li Wubo said solemnly. Yes. Also prepare the blood-colored passageway and the demonic heart array diagram. Li Wubo took a deep breath. After hesitating for a moment, he finally said, at the critical moment, the heads of 100,000 people will fill the sky, and the hearts of 100,000 people will open a path for Li Xiongtu, Li Ju, Li Batian and the rest to leave this place. The three elders shuddered violently at the same time. Looks of disbelief shone in their eyes. Heaven's net-evading demon. The cold light in Li Wubo's eyes was like a ghostly fire in a graveyard in the middle of the night. The three elders nodded solemnly. The Heaven's net-evading demon was a peculiar secret technique. When the Li clan discovered the super purple crystal mine, they found a peculiar parchment in the periphery of the purple crystal mine. This secret technique was recorded on the parchment. With the innocent people, 10,000 virgin boys, 10,000 virgin girls, 10,000 women and children, 10,000 old and young, as the main force and 10,000 others as the auxiliary force. Behead them and turn them into mountains of white bones. Fill the sky with resentment and break the heaven's net. Take their hearts and turn them into a path for vengeful souls, so that we, the extraterrestrial demons, can be free and unfettered. This was Heaven's net-evading demon. It was an extremely cruel escape method that originated from the extraterrestrial demons. As the name implied, it was to kill 100,000 innocent people when they were covered by the Heaven's net and had nowhere to go and were facing certain death. Then, use the resentment gathered from the heads of the 100,000 innocent people to break through the Heaven's net. Use the hearts of the 100,000 innocent people to pave a path to escape from the disaster. Furthermore, among these 100,000 people, the number of children, adult women, and the elderly had to reach 10,000 each. This was the most basic condition. After this condition was fulfilled, it didn't matter even if others repeated it. Such a method was inhumane to the extreme. Ever since the Li clan obtained it, they had never used it. However, they had long prepared the formation. Obviously, it was a precaution. The moment the formation was set up, the elder master of the Li clan, Li Chuanbua, had appeared immediately. He destroyed the entire formation and strictly forbade them from doing such things again. At that time, Li Chuanbua had once said bitterly, from the moment this formation was revealed to the world, the moment the Li clan's people harbored such thoughts, it had already determined the Li clan's demise. If they didn't repent in time, the Li clan wouldn't necessarily be annihilated. Ever since then, the Li clan had been peaceful for a few thousand years and didn't harbor such thoughts. However, when it came to Li Wubu's generation, Li Wubu felt that the Tribulation Sword Master was about to be born, and that the great clan was in imminent danger. Therefore, he secretly set up this formation in the one-line sky, far away from the Li clan. There weren't many people who knew about this. Only Li Wubu's trusted aides knew a little about it. Now, Li Wubu was obviously going to put this plan that he had prepared in advance into action. In another direction, Li Ju and Li Batian held a thin piece of paper in their hands and watched it turn into nothingness. The brothers' expressions were somewhat complicated. Inside was Li Wubu's secret arrangement. Only the two of them knew about this arrangement. If the Li clan is around, abandon this plan. If they aren't, leave with Li Xiongtu. Once they come into contact with the tribulation, find an opportunity to do so, and so. If it doesn't work, destroy the formation and replace it. You must keep this a secret. This was Li Wubu's real plan. If it really came to that, the Li clan had already sacrificed the entire clan for you. the Tribulation Sword Master. You can't just ignore this, right? If something happened to Li Xiongtu, what other choice do you have other than choosing between Li Ju and Li Batian to be the Tribulation Sword Master? Even if it's purely to repay the Li clan's contributions, for the sake of these hundreds of thousands of lives, you should also make up for it. Otherwise, you, the Tribulation Sword Master, would also be going against the Heavenly Tao. Which one is more important? You should know very well. After all, the Li clan is the Tribulation clan that you have decided on long ago. This kind of thing isn't easy to change. Li Xiongtu sat in his room. He was deep in thought, thinking about the Li clan's current situation and trying to find a way out for the Li clan in this precarious time. However, he wasn't someone who was good at planning at all. In terms of fighting and killing, Li Xiongtu wasn't weaker than anyone else. However, when it came to scheming, he was at his wit's end. Meng Huanhuan sat behind him obediently. Her eyes were full of tenderness as she looked at Li Xiongtu. No matter what happened in the future, at least the present was already happiness. I've already gotten it. Li Xiongtu finally gave up. He let out a long sigh and said indifferently, I can't think of a way. However, it's just a battle. His straightforward and domineering style had destined him to be a natural-born warrior. He wasn't a wise man. At the moment when he gave up on thinking, he actually felt relaxed all over. It's just a battle, no. You need to fight forever. A voice sounded softly. Li Xiongtu turned around and couldn't help but be shocked. Elder Master. The person who came was the Elder Master of the Li clan, Li Chuanbua. Li Chuanbua's face was solemn. He nodded and said, I heard your conversation just now. Deep exhaustion and sadness could be seen in his eyes. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he went straight to the point and said, I'm here to chase you away. Chase me away. Li Xiongtu was stunned. The clan leader had just mentioned a contingency plan, and the Elder Master had actually stood up immediately and wanted to chase him away. What kind of logic was this? Li Chuanbua took a deep breath. With his hands behind his back, he said, If you head north from here, there are tens of thousands of miles of vast snowy plains. There are no signs of human habitation for hundreds of thousands of miles. There are only countless ferocious beasts and spirit beasts. You can train and fight along the way. If you don't die, you can also achieve great success in martial arts. After passing through the snowy plains, you'll reach the 3 Stars Divine Clan. Everything will depend on your luck. He took off the ring on his finger and tossed it lightly. The silver ring drew a parabola in the air and landed in Li Xiongtu's hand. Inside, I've prepared all the medicine, daily necessities, dry rations and clean water for you. There's even 10,000 liters of fine wine. Other than that, there are also many heavenly treasures, purple crystal cores and purple crystal jade essence. Li Chuanbua said, There are a few books inside that contain my cultivation experience over the past 10,000 years. You can use them for reference. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.